Ooh, turn my mic on. Planning Board meeting of April 15th, 2025 to order. We do have a quorum. We are missing Rich and Angel. No online participants. And can we get a motion to adopt the agenda? Rich isn't here, so someone's going to have to take his place. Yeah.
I gotta pick up this stuff. I make a motion to adopt the minutes from last.
Actually, this is agenda for today.
Yeah, I make a motion to adopt the agenda for today.
All right, all in favor? All right, so moved. And adoption of the previous minutes. Does anyone have any changes, comments, questions? And if not, you can make a motion to approve as presented.
So moved.
All right, did you get that? Michael Vell
So moved.
moved. All in favor? Aye. All right, so moved. Let's see, public comment. Do we have public comment tonight?
Yes, we do. Just a reminder, a maximum of 30 minutes is to be allocated to hear from the public during the public comment period. Speakers shall sign up on the sign-up sheet at the entrance of the chambers before the meeting is called to order. No individual will be permitted to address the board if they do not sign up to speak prior to the start of the meeting. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Speakers shall approach the podium, state their name and address when addressing the board. Speakers must be civil in language and presentation and act within reasonable standards of courtesy. Use of slander, name-calling, personal attacks, or threatening speech or behavior is prohibited. The board may designate or ask for spokespersons for groups supporting or opposing the same positions. The board shall not engage in debate or commentary with residents during the public comment period. The audience must maintain order and decorum in their conduct and must refrain from disruptive applause, comments, or disorderly speaking during the meeting. A person who interrupts, disturbs, or disrupts an official meeting is guilty of a misdemeanor. A person who interrupts a meeting and is asked to leave the meeting by the presiding officer and refuses to do so is also guilty of a misdemeanor. That being said,
So no breaking the law, kids.
first up,
And could you please, when you do come up, could you please state what your, what project you're actually commenting on, just as a reminder?
David, were you just signing in? Okay. First up is Pat Conway. I just have Somerset written down, so just please state your address when you come up.
I really thought I'd be able to comment after I heard discussion about the, I'm sorry, Pat Conway. I live in Somerset, 8910 Waltham Forest Court. And I thought I would be able to comment after there was a discussion regarding the property on Tom Short and Ray Road and the proposal to build the have the rezoning there. And I haven't heard anything yet, so I'd like to request that I save my comment for later until there's something I can respond to.
We only do public comments at the beginning of the meeting. They're not voting tonight, though, on anything.
I'm sorry, was that?
They're not voting tonight on anything, but
They're
public
not voting.
comments are at the beginning of the meeting, not at the end. I'm sorry.
Okay, well then I'll just, the property there, I've lived in Somerset for 25 years. I've been through the Walmart fight. I've been through the discussion about the 12 theater, movie theater with the parking garage. So now it comes down to something that seems to be much more reasonable for the area. It's still 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag because the land is not that big. Every square inch is crammed. And then there's 2 giant retaining ponds. Parts of Somerset have flooding issues due to some of the stream issues. And this is going to be right there. Their corner on my street is going to be where those retaining ponds are. And I don't really know how deep they'll be, how big they'll be. There was no real information given on that. And I wanted to figure that out so I can decide how much it's going to affect me and what I should do about it. You know, we were told that the property slopes down there lower, so, you know, it's kind of like it's not going towards our neighborhood, but I haven't seen any study of the property. It's not my property, so I haven't been out there walking around trying to decide, you know, 3 acres in, what the slope of the land is in terms of water retention. So I'm kind of coming at a loss. I would just like more information. Also, if this gets approved, does the petitioner have the option of radically changing what they're proposing? Instead of having townhomes and houses, can it all of a sudden be all townhouses? Can the townhouses become smaller and less expensive? Can the shopping include a big box store? A lot of the stuff was very vague. It's like, here's a pretty picture of what we want to do, and this is what we're thinking about. We have to get it approved, but the only thing, it seemed like it was really solid was the residential, which was the townhomes, and the single-family homes, which would be on the perimeter bordering my neighborhood, which I have no problem with. I do have a problem if it's going to affect flooding, or if all of a sudden, once they're part of Marvin, then I have no say because I don't live in Marvin, but
That's
I don't
time.
want to be, you get sold one bill of goods, and then all of a sudden, it's a whole different story when they come through. And
Excuse me, that's time. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Next up is Kristen Ross, 8920? Yeah, but I'm not. You're, okay, just signing in. Next up is this Forrest Kelly?
Good evening, thank you. My name is Forrest Kelly. I live at 9024 Tenton Hole Lane. Today I'd like to address the rezoning of Somerset and the proposed mixed-use residential area. I'd like to preface my statements by saying I am not anti-development by any means. I have lived next to that block of woods for 6 years, and living next to an empty block of woods comes with its own issues. I've worked with David Miller on cleaning up the street and stopping some of the riffraff and trouble that we've had down there. They've been good neighbors. But what we are for is responsible development. So the few areas I'd like to address, the first is high-density housing. The plan that we have seen is for 75 residences on top of the commercial. That's a lot for 30 acres. Specifically the townhomes. Looking at a recent survey from Marvin residents, 69% say they are not in favor of increasing residential density. For future residential development, the rate of support for townhomes is only 8%. There's undoubtedly going to be impacts to traffic. The top priority of Marvin residents, based on a recent survey, 87% say is to improve traffic conditions. Again, high density is going to have significant impacts on there. There will be impacts on the school. The developers recently stated that they anticipate 11 school-age children to be added with the 75 additional homes. I reckon that's an understatement. But we would like to ensure that there is an impact statement from Union County Public Schools with this development. The next area I'd like to address is the buffer area in the green space. The plans that we have seen call for a 20-foot buffer. Based on what we've seen online, the buffer for a type B mixed-use development adjacent to a single-family residence buffer is 30 feet. So we'd like to understand, are we going to have 20 feet, 30 feet, and what exactly is that going to look like? The next issue is the water issue. Again, I've lived down there for 6 years. Every time it rains, the water backs up in the streets. There is very limited drainage in the area. It is always wet back there. We deal with mosquitoes and lots of other animals because of that. We just want to make sure that construction does not impact us. We do not get water backing up into the street, into our yards. We'd like to ensure that the developers work with the Army Corps of Engineers and that everything is compliant with the 404 water permits that the Army Corps of Engineers issues. That's everything I've got. Thank you.
All right, next up is Lauren Thomas, 3025 Groves Edge Lane.
Hello, Lauren Thomas, 3025 Groves Edge Lane. Thank you to the village staff for sharing the 2022 stormwater permit recension and the summary of public feedback from the last planning board meeting. We have several important questions that remain. Why was the original stormwater permit from 2017 not rescinded until after town hall construction was completed, despite being legally binding? Given stormwater concerns raised as early as 2021, what mitigation efforts occurred during construction? And why did the village commission the McAdams study shortly after completion of all stormwater requirements, if all stormwater requirements were met? Regarding the MS4 status for the village, how are the full permit requirements for low density being met? That includes dispersed flow, vegetative conveyance, and annual reporting. The community requests the village share its MS4 stormwater management plan and ongoing reports. After research of new stormwater filings, it appears that the $5 million GO bond presented as a park and an amphitheater was also intended to serve as the regional stormwater solution through new retention ponds placed in similar locations to the original 2017 permit. Why wasn't this communicated to the community during the GO bond campaign? Given these concerns and the change in engineering firms from 2017 to 2019, is the village confident that the continuity of stormwater compliance was maintained throughout the town hall project? Downstream residents now have secured a second site visit with Army Corps, and this time with NCDEQ stormwater compliance officers. So considering this site visit, we request that you delay the ROMS rezoning until proper investigation and studies have completed. Additionally, due to his position as the Environmental Management Commission Vice Chair over NCDEQ, we believe that there is a potential conflict of interest and respectfully request that Chris Duggan recuse himself from any role in the decision of delay due to new studies. Separately, I want to thank Christina for her insight on Section 106 and historic site protections. Residents have learned of a potential slave cemetery recorded on Union County maps and filed with the State Historic Preservation Office. I've sent that to you in your handouts. It's impacting sites like ZEPSA, Town Hall, and ROMS. The State Office of Archaeology has confirmed that due diligence surveys are required just by state review. A qualified archaeologist must be present if grounds disturbance is planned, and a 100-foot buffer is required if surveys are not performed. We respectfully request that an archaeological study be required before development and rezoning decisions continue in the Marvin Heritage District. This serves as a public notice that such burials may exist and that further due diligence is needed to comply with North Carolina Statute 70, Article 3. New South Associates is an archaeological firm that has come highly recommended. It's an ethical archaeological firm. And Catawba Valley Land Trust, Catawba with a K, has a great experience with preserving land with historic cemeteries and protecting the heel splitter habitat. Thank you.
Next up is Vamsi Vamuri, 6040 Olive, I think.
Hey, everyone. Good evening. My name is Vamsi Vemuri. I live in 6004 Tiali Road, President Marvin community. I'm here as a HOA board president at this point of time. The reason I got elected is because majority of our residents, they oppose the commercial development that is happening right in front of our neighborhood. And that is one of the reasons they chose me as their president, I would say. And I'm here to represent their concerns in conjunction with mine as well. And I would like to thank the council and the planning board members for hearing us, taking into concern our issues or whatever we are trying to explain here. We are not going based on misinformation. All our concerns are based on what we have seen, what we are experiencing. So by saying so, as all of us know, that for everything there is a benchmark. Whether we develop a Marvin development ordinance or we do something, we definitely refer to something, we use it as a reference in doing so. So in the same case, if you look at town of Waxhaw or Mecklenburg County or Gaston County, their parking, whenever they are approving any commercial establishment, their parking requirements are 4 to 5 parking spaces minimum for 1,000 square feet. I'm not sure why Village of Marvin is not imposing those kind of regulations on the commercial establishments that are coming in this area, especially in the area where everything is categorized as residential, which now we are turning them into commercial. So please look into that, because where does that parking goes? If we give the minimum parking, where does the parking happens? Is it going to be in the neighborhoods? It's going to be on the road? Without proper parking facilities, how is it going to impact all of the residents in this area? And I believe what we have been hearing from the village of Marvin or the council is that in the Marvin Development Ordinance, they only chose 2 or 3 parking spaces. That is how the Marvin Development Ordinance is. But is our expectation that people that are coming to these commercial developments where they are going to house high-end restaurants, is the expectation that people are going to come here by walk and come and enjoy their dining? I don't think so, because if they are high-end restaurants, they definitely come by cars. I'm sure that is going to create a lot of issues for parking. So definitely, please look into the parking perspective of the commercial establishment that is coming next to the neighborhood. Then, coming to the second point, which is the impervious area. Currently,
That's
the plan.
time. You can't yield to another person.
Can I continue?
No, the next person has to come up next. Next is Raja Tangalam. I apologize.
Hi, my name is just Tango, just call me Tango. My name is Raja Thangalmadi, live in Preserved Marvin, 4025 Flowering Peach Road. I'm here regarding the rezoning and for the planning board. What Vamsi, who is part of a HOA board member, want to continue on the same concerns that we have as a neighborhood, that seeing the arena of entire Marvin is changing to a commercial area. So when we moved in, it's considered, when we came in to look at the area, Marvin is like a central park of New York. Now it's becoming a commercial area. So a couple of concerns that we have. One, regarding this, another standards for commercial, the parking spots. Why for the nearest development that we had in Waukesha has 4 to 5 parking spots, but here it's saying only 1 and 2. If the parking goes, assuming the commercial goes big success, and where does the parking come in? We are the first neighborhood community that's going to get impacted. Is Marvin, Village of Marvin, what are the remediations that Village of Marvin is going to do if the traffic goes north and we get more traffic and that is impacting our community? Second, regarding the stormwater. The area that is being scheduled for the commercial development has 2.94 acres, out of which 1.94 is for the development, and 1 acre is scheduled for stormwater retention. Even there, I think the developer has been creating a underwater stormwater retention, which by whatever means, if it goes in the south direction and it impacts our flooding, is Village of Marvin ready to take necessary measures to resolve those issues with the developer? If the houses gets impacted because of those flooding, who's going to cover the insurance? Is the developer is going to take care of it, or where it's going to be? How Village of Marvin is going to come in and help us to remediate those issues? Second, we will go and create, as part of HOA, we're going to go and do our own certified engineer analysis support, the stormwater retention, hydrological studies, traffic analysis. If those reports come different to what Village of Marvin has already done, what are the remediation steps? Are you going to stick to what we came up with, or what the certified engineers that we hired came up with as an independent analysis, or is it Village of Marvin? When you have that conflict, how are we going to resolve it? We need some kind of rules and engagement to see how that can be done. Second, if you look at all the commercial around Marvin, there is no 2-story buildings. Everything is, even Publix nearby, Marvin Gardens. Why we are entertaining to create a 2-story in a residential area? That is something that I want planning board to look at it. Second, on the traffic analysis, as I already mentioned, if the traffic, I think the developer is already doing the analysis. If we also do the analysis and there is a deviation in the report, what are the steps for the Village of Marvin that's going to come in and help the neighborhood, which is a community of 101 people? Second, and the last one is the trails.
That's time.
How much? 3 more minutes?
No, your
One
time's
more
up. Sorry.
Okay, but overall, the concerns, what we have listed out.
Sorry, I have to cut you off. I'm
Thank you.
sorry.
keep it fair for
All right.
everybody.
Next up is Francisco Rivera, 205 Belvedere Lane.
I'm Francisco Rivera, 205 Belvedere Lane. I've been a resident in Somerset for over 21 years, raised 2 beautiful daughters, and I remember when we were fighting Walmart coming up to where Kohl's was, and it took us about 5-7 years. I haven't just seen much of the project, but one of our concerns is definitely traffic. I've seen some communities in the Wesley Chapel that they have these developments, and after that, they basically close down the community at certain hours. So I know that if the project moves forward, that some of those aspects of traffic increasing through our neighborhood, which brings all kinds of problems and circumstances, that they were looking to, that through traffic, that there will be at least some restrictions or times that they can use that to access that project. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
And lastly, we have Kristen Conway, 12017 Carolina Cherry Lane.
Good evening. My name is Kristen Conway at 12017 Carolina Cherry. I am the Vice President of the Preserve It Marvin HOA, and I am representing the majority of our homeowners. Tonight, I'm here to express concerns specifically about the ROM's rezoning and the number of deviations being requested from Marvin's development ordinances, as well as state ordinances. These changes challenge the standards that protect our safety, our infrastructure, and long-term planning. North Carolina law states that variances must be based on proven and unique hardships, not preferences or self-created limitations like a 2.94 acre area. Legal experts, including Arnold and Smith, emphasize that variances should be rare and tightly justified to preserve zoning integrity. What hardships justify the number of variances that are currently being requested? And we have Somerset here tonight with us. If we ignore these ordinances, why will neighborhoods annex in voluntarily to Marvin, bringing in more revenue for our town? They won't, because it erodes trust with the public as well. We're not against overall growth, though we are personally, and I am personally against retail growth in a 2.94 acre parcel. But we are respectfully asking that the Planning Board and the Village Council vote no to this specific proposal. And let me explain why. It is ambiguous modification language. The application allows for vague, open-ended clauses and statements that ultimately can be redefined without public comment. It also talks about a reduced setback of over 60%, or almost 60% cut from 85 to 50 feet. Furthermore, there is no pedestrian path that exists from the Preserve at Marvin all the way to Town Hall. This is important because of our schools and the safety that this setback is supposed to create for emergency access, as well as that foot traffic we discussed. There is inadequate open space and tree save. Only 7.5% of the site is allocated as open space. This is well below what is expected in the Marvin Heritage District, and it's a issue with the green buffer and the flooding that you've heard us discuss already. Furthermore, we've mentioned inadequate parking. I want to comment on Jamie's comment the other night that you want more parking, but you don't want development. Let's be clear, we want responsible development. And where will that parking overflow go? We already have parking struggles with our own town hall. Finally, there's reduced EV charging and infrastructure stations. 10 is the Marvin ordinance, and it falls far short with only 3. That is an under-delivering on the further infrastructure. So for this specific proposal, we're requesting a vote of no. Furthermore, given what has come to light tonight with the Army Corps DEQ visit, the hydrological study that we are commissioning as a neighborhood ourselves due to our own flooding, the grave sites and historic preservation of those slave graves that need to be done, we are requesting a delay. Thank you.
Madam Chair, that is everyone. You may proceed.
Great. All right, we are moving on. This is presentations? I don't know. That's right, yeah, okay, thank you. So we are on unfinished business, discussion of CZ-2025-1, which is the parcel at 10018 Marvin School Road. And just to be clear, we are not voting tonight.
Yes, thank you, that is correct. Austin's going to put up just a site plan, but staff has been completing their review and going through ordinance compliance and with the proposed rezoning. I'm going to go through my draft staff report. Once again, no actions being taken tonight. The applicant is in the process of completing his TIA and incorporating comments we discussed with DOT regarding access into the site. So once that is all completed, which is anticipated to be done by the May meeting, then planning board, if ready, can take action. Once again, the ordinance the ordinance allows for the planning board to take up to 3 meetings. Technically, we're at our 3rd, but they are still awaiting the last information that was requested and approved. One sec. It's click this one. Yep. Plain set. Yep. Okay. With that being said, so the village has received a conditional zoning map application to rezone the property located at 10018 Marvin School Road from rural residential to the Marvin Heritage District commercial only. The rezoning request is to develop the site as a commercial mixed-use development to include light commercial uses such as retail, restaurant, professional office as permitted in the Heritage District as outlined in Table 8.1 of the MDO. Go down. Let's go one more. Stop right there. The surrounding land use and existing land uses and zoning include to the north it's residential and common open space to the right, which is the Preserve at Marvin. To the south is Civic and Village Hall. To the east is residential, and the property is zoned R40 Union County. It's the gates at Ansley. And to the west as well is residential / common open space for the Preserve at Marvin. The site currently consists of approximately 2.939 acres with an existing single-family home and detached accessory structure. The applicant is proposing to demolish the accessory structure on the to demolish the existing structures on the property and construct 4 new commercial buildings totaling 30,000 square feet of commercial retail space. The proposed development will be phased with building 1 and 2, the 2 buildings there on the left closest to Village Hall being constructed first, and buildings 3 and 4 being built during phase 2. And it's anticipated that the development will not exceed 7 years to be fully developed. The total building sizes are to the left there is 8,000. It's all buildings 1, 2, and 3 are 3 stories. Or sorry, not 3 stories, good God, 2 stories. With building 1 being a 4,000 square foot footprint, 2 stories, so a total of 8,000 square feet. Building 2, they're closest to their drive access, they're on the left side, is 7,000 square feet. Building 3 is 10,000 square feet, once again, 5,000 square foot footprint, 2 stories. And then building 4, the one furthest there on the right, is a 5,000 square foot, 1-story building. Permitted uses for the proposed development include specialty, commercial, and retail space offering goods and services such as ice cream, coffee, specialty foods, wine, gifts, clothing boutique, art gallery, basically all uses kind of listed there in Article 8. Except as otherwise set forth as part of this conditional rezoning, the property may be devoted to all those listed uses, and we'll kind of talk about that as one of the recommended condition on limiting certain of those uses. Once again, the conditions have to be mutually agreed upon with the applicant, but if permitted or if approved, unless prohibited as part of the conditional zoning, all those uses in that in Table 8.1 would be permitted for the Heritage District. Tree preservation, so the applicant, we go up one. The applicant has already completed a tree survey and included that with their proposal. There's approximately 26 existing canopy trees on the site. The tree preservation mitigation plan would be required as part of the preliminary plat construction phase. The village, once again, all trees removed would have to be mitigated, as well as with the proposed buffers on the rear and side, which is buffer type C. It's a 20-foot buffer with a minimum of 60% opaqueness, so it would require, once again, additional trees to be planted over what would have to be mitigated for what's removed from the site currently. Speaking of buffers, once again, the applicant is proposing a 20-foot vegetative buffer along the rear and side property lines. This complies with type C buffer per Article 11 of the MDO. That type C is a minimum of 60% opacity. Wow. The detailed landscape and buffer plans will be required as part of the construction document phase if the rezoning is approved.
Hunter, can you just remind or recap us on the different types of buffers allowed in the Heritage District? So,
Well, with the adoption of the MDO, that changed. I know, so the old ordinance had you had the buffer transition, and it was based off of the surrounding existing uses as well as the proposed zoning. It's similar in lines up to that, but the Heritage District is one district in the MDO. And so if it abuts an existing single-family residential, the minimum buffer is buffer type C, which is a 20-foot buffer. There is an existing 25-foot tree preservation strip on the rear of the property with the preserve, so in total, it'd be 45 feet of buffering between the commercial property and the residential property, or the actual single-family residential properties in the preserve. However, once again, this is conditional zoning. That could be something that's discussed and potentially recommended to increase the buffer. That is one thing that I have in my staff recommendations is at least to increase it to 25 feet on the rear, which would give a total of 50, which is consistent with the Marvin Grove development, because theirs was 20 coupled with a 30 on the preserve for a total of 50. So all that stuff is open for discussion. But right now, they are proposing what is the minimum per the ordinance. Regarding greenways and trails, the applicant is proposing an 8-foot asphalt sidewalk there along the property, Marvin School Road frontage, as shown on the site plan. You can go back down one now. There we go. This is, once again, this is a portion of the Marvin Loop, which the village has received funding for and currently going through the engineering process for that project. So the applicant, if approved, the applicant has the option to either construct that portion of the trail per the approved Marvin Loop plans that get approved by NCDOT for construction, and or pay a fee in lieu for the portion of the material, of the linear footage of the asphalt. And the location of that is approximate. Once again, the applicant is working with our Dewberry, the contracted engineer with the village for the Marvin Loop project, to get the alignment surveyed and straight, like basically set in stone based off of what Dewberry is doing for the overall loop extension plans. Any questions on that? Does that make sense? Parking, once again, the Heritage District, as we have discussed in previous rezonings as well as with this one, there are no minimum parking. That's how the district was set up. The development is proposing 92 parking spots, including 4 ADA and 3 electric parking or electric charging station spots. Once again, that 3 is a deviation requested. The MDO, when we adopted it, we required 1 PEV charging station for every 10 parking spots. So, you know, that is once again something that can kind of be discussed. It was recommended to be 3, just so there is still available parking for the rest of the development, as well as it's kind of this is the first development under the MDO that has that new requirement in there. So, the site also does connect with Village Hall, which once again, depending on, you know, approval and the uses, you would have different times of the uses. Village Hall has approximately 30 parking spots, so it's ultimately supposed to be a shared parking / walkable and shared, you know, throughout the district. So that does open up additional parking opportunity depending on off hours from Village Hall, as well as, you know, no meetings or anything going on here. Can you go down one more? Regarding utility with water and sewer, so water is accessible from the front of the property. There's existing water along Marvin School Road. There is an existing platted easement there at the rear of the property for sewer, so the applicant would have to extend the sewer to the back of his property line. All those plans would have to be reviewed and approved with Union County Water, but this is their, you know, conceptual sketch for water and sewer extension. Yeah, you can get back up. Well, you can, actually, right there. Yep. So these are the proposed elevations for the building. Once again, the elevations are tied with these rezoning. The applicant has originally proposed different elevations that I believe you guys first saw at the first planning board meeting in February, based off of comments and feedback received from the neighborhood meeting and the initial planning board meeting. The applicant then revised to these current elevations, which is kind of consistent with the design of Village Hall, as well as the color scheme and material as well. Other than that, that's kind of the high-level overview of the staff report. Once again, the applicant is in the process of completing a TIA. All that information will then be provided to you guys at the next meeting, including, we had a meeting with DOT last week, including road improvements for driveway access. Conceptually, what was discussed with DOT is that there would be a leftover turn lane coming into the development. The development, the exit of the current development would be right-out only, as well as in Village Hall would then become a right-in, right-out only as well. So if you're trying to then make a left into Village Hall, if this development's approved, you would go and turn left into this development and connect in.
I have a couple questions about, so in terms, because it's conditional zoning, what we can approve if we ask for certain things and they agree to it with conditions.
That's correct.
So my first question is about parking and stormwater.
Okay.
So a lot of us have, in previous meetings, talked about the lack of parking, especially for the size of the buildings on the property. If we were to ask for increased parking, how does that then affect stormwater, and have the engineers actually looked at the plan for this underground system?
Ravi, do you want to speak regarding the stormwater aspect of that? I know his engineers have already done, started preliminary design. Why he's coming up, once again, if the rezoning is approved, the applicant would then move into their construction document phase, which requires a stormwater study and to comply with our ordinance that's reviewed by the village as well as NCDEQ for the permitting. It's not required as part of the rezoning phase, but the applicant has already done initial design and discussions with his team, so I'll let him kind of talk about that.
We already have the design work
Don't get too
complete.
technical.
No. We already have our engineers working on it. The only thing that we were still waiting on is the TIA. The TIA was dependent on what the DOT's requirements and their improvements for the property were. So we got that list. We're trying to incorporate that into the TIA and as far as the plans too. And I know the parking was a concern that was brought up before and now. We actually lowered one of the buildings from 10,000 square foot to 5,000, from 2-story to 1-story. That added us another parking that we saved for 5,000. That should give us almost a little over 3 parking spaces for 30,000 square foot.
It's roughly 3.6, I think,
Because it's only
per
30,000 square foot
1,000
now.
square feet.
And is there any, think about that, and then, are there any updates on, with the sheriff's department potentially having space in the,
We did have that discussion. I think our attorney and the city or the town's attorney are actually talking about that. They have an informal discussion going on and some documents that they're reviewing. So that's still in the process.
okay. And
Can I
have
add?
our engineers looked at the water, like the stormwater?
Once again, because it's the rezoning, the stormwater, they would, if this rezoning is approved and they moved into the construction document phase, yes, that the village would be reviewing those for compliance with our ordinance.
Okay,
For example,
but that doesn't, that would then require changes potentially to the plan after it was approved.
so right now they're proposing to do an underground system. The only way that it would change the plans would be if they had to come back and then put in a actual above-ground retention pond. Then they would have to come back and do a site plan amendment,
Site plan amendment, okay.
which would go through the same process again. So that's one reason why he's got his engineers making sure that it can be designed and meet the meet our ordinance requirement with the underground system, because that is an important aspect of this approval.
And even for the stormwater, I know they have raised concerns, the residents have concerns about how the water flows. I mean, I don't have a problem working with them, but I really need to know what needs to be done or how much of access could I have into the HOA's land? Because the natural flow is, of course, that way. Even if I build houses or anything, it's going to flow towards, that's the natural flow. If there is some mitigation that need to be worked out with the HOA, I'm open to those discussions.
Have you broached those discussions with them?
I mean,
What was their reaction?
Most of the discussions were informal with few residents, but I think one of the suggestions that was made, and I think I got some feelers from the HOA board that they do want to have some discussions, and we are open to it. And I already told my attorney to see if we can schedule a time. So I'm just looking at the slot where it works for the HOA board, and we'll have those discussions.
Okay, well, there's plenty of them in here, so.
Yeah, well,
You guys,
Okay, okay, this-
outside of this meeting.
This is not a back and forth. Come on.
and I will add that, once again, as Ravi was mentioning, the HOA president for the preserve reached out to me. That was a conversation with the previous HOA board. And I've asked Ravi if he would be open to it, and he agreed. And so I'm going to put them in contact. Once again, this will be a meeting with them and him. The applicant's already held his neighborhood meeting per the ordinance requirement. So this would be something to, work through any finer details or get that information specifically for those residents.
Well, this is my own, I don't speak for the board, but I still just think there are too many buildings on this property. I know you've been listening, and please do not interrupt. I know you've done a lot, and you have continued to reduce. It just seems like there's just still a lot going on, so, but that's just where I am right now. Anyone else have any comments about just overall? I know you have comments about, bless you. Okay, you've been on record. Oh, we're just crickets tonight, kids? Okay. All right, well, good luck with the stormwater discussions.
Thank you.
So just to kind of reiterate next steps, once again, he's finalizing getting the TIA, and then those recommended traffic improvements will be then incorporated into a site plan. There is some finer information regarding like open space calculation, a few other things that I'm going to request from the applicant, so we can just have that information for consideration at the next meeting. Overall, there are only a few recommended conditions at this time. Like I said, we're kind of working through those, and I'm going to get with the applicant to discuss this a little further. One being that all NCDOT and village traffic engineering comments and recommendations shall be considered, which once again, he's in the process of doing that already. Another one's consult with NCDOT on potential road improvements along Marvin School Road. I can already say that the applicant's doing that, but still incorporate that in. A lot require the detailed lighting and landscape plan with the construction documents. They're already required, but we always kind of make that a condition for clarification. Those documents will then be reviewed by the DRB and Village Council. The easement for the Marvin Loop will be dedicated. To kind of clarify there, there's a chance that some of that will be in the dedicated right-of-way, but where it's not, and if it's fully on this property, that he would dedicate the easement for the construction of the Marvin Loop Trail, as well as then consider the fee in lieu or the potential improvements for the Marvin Loop to be installed by the developer. And then the only other one is that, and they already have this if you look at the site plan, but increasing that rear buffer to 25 feet, which increases some vegetative planting and stuff. They have room because the parking doesn't encroach into that 20-foot buffer, and it's roughly about 30 feet off anyway, off the rear property line. So, but getting it platted and increasing some of the plantings and density of that, of the plantings is the only other recommended condition I have at this time.
Sorry, go ahead.
This is the first time I've seen kind of the 15,000-foot elevation in the site. The home, it's over to the right. It seems close to that buffer.
So on the preserve, they have a 25-foot tree perimeter buffer. So then you. Well, so this is on the preserve property. So what the applicant is proposing is a 20-foot buffer on his property. So it'd be from basically the parking lot to his property line. Then there is a 25-foot tree perimeter strip owned and maintained by the Preserve at Marvin HOA. It's a preserve strip for tree preservation. So that adds, right now, like I said, currently 45 feet of buffering. And then that house then sits, and I don't have it in front of me, but that's a side setback of an additional 20 feet.
Side yard.
Yeah, it's a side yard, so it's at least 20 feet. That house has to at least be 20 feet off the side property line. I can go find the survey for that lot. But in total, if you take back of parking lot to the side of the home would be approximately 65 to 70 feet. And that's from the edge of the parking lot as it's proposed.
Please hold your comments.
The other recommendation, and I know this was brought up, I believe, in the, either in the neighborhood meeting or at the first meeting, there is an existing fence in the preserves property there along in that tree preservation. Something that could be discussed between the applicant and that HOA is potentially replacing that fence and putting it at his property line, which then it increases, because there's an elevation change, meaning his property sits a little bit higher than those lots in the preserve. So putting that fence at his property line and then still having the buffer will then also increase the screening from any potential, parking or headlights from cars. So that's one thing that I have already noted and have mentioned to the applicant for those conversations. But ultimately, there is that existing fence, and it wouldn't make sense to put two fences up to an extent. So that's something that if the applicant's open to it, as well as the HOA is willing to, basically remove the one on their property. But ultimately, that's still their fence, their choice.
What is the slope of that back property line?
The top.
Sorry, I'm trying to find it in the documents, but
Go to the existing conditions. I think there's roughly like 5 to 8 feet of fall.
what page, where, 20?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, but those are topo lines. Scroll into the elevation. Oh, yeah.
I broke it.
Give me 1 sec. I'll just look right here.
That's of his.
There's like I said, there's about, you can go out there and look now, there's roughly 8 to 10 feet of fall currently. And once again, this is existing conditions. When they get into their grading and stuff, you would still, all the site would be graded, once again, to capture all stormwater falling on the site. It would be then retained with their proposed underground system and then discharged. What our stormwater ordinance states is that whatever the pre-existing kind of drainage patterns would, the post-development has to kind of meet, if not be better than that. And so wherever the water's kind of currently kind of falling off the site and stuff, which is I think at the front right of the property there off of Marvin School Road, in the back left, or did I get that? Maybe it's the other way around, front left and back right. But all that would then be part of their stormwater design.
Questions before we move on?
All right, and the final thing is, once again, the development agreements required a part of the conditional zoning. The first draft was provided by the applicant, reviewed by the village attorney. Those comments were sent back, so that final, once those comments are addressed, and then the final kind of conditions and other recommendations, that will be a part of your guys' packet for consideration along with the rezoning at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to new business, discussion of CZ 2025-2.
All right, so I think Ptolemy's got it. So the village has received an annexation and rezoning petition for the Rayleigh Miller property. It's the 28 acre property there located at the corner of Tom Short and Ray Road. This meeting kind of is a preliminary presentation or introduction of the rezoning request. The applicant held their neighborhood meeting back on March 31st. Had very good attendance. I don't think you guys have really made any additions to their site plan, but I'll turn it over to the applicant to kind of go through their proposal. Once again, this is kind of, there's no formal recommendations, motions being made tonight. This is to overall present the project for you guys to see it first time, and for the planning board to ask any initial questions or provided some initial comments and feedback on the proposal. So, Lisa?
It does have a laser pointer, by the way.
Click it and see if it works.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Thompson. I'm a land use consultant with Moore & Van Allen. With my previous experience as a planner over the last 18 years in municipalities throughout Union County, including Marvin, it is good to be back. I'm excited to be here. Also with me tonight, we have Rob Crusher with Jones Homes, David Miller with Rayleigh Miller Properties, Mark Keim with Civil and Environmental Consultants, CEC. He's the landscape architect for the project. We have a representative from Robert Johnson Architects as well. As Hunter mentioned, we are seeking annexation and conditional zoning to an MU2. It's a mixed-use zoning district within the town limits. Conditional zoning provides a lot of certainty. It's a site-specific plan. There's a certainty on the layout. There's a defined relationship between adjacent properties, open space benefits, certainty on buffers and setbacks, commitments to amenity areas, and community engagement. Can you all hear? Oh, yeah. Again, this is a site-specific development plan. It gives us a little bit of flexibility, but it also gives you all flexibility to make requests with conditions to address any conformity concerns. To orient you to the site, the subject site is outlined in yellow. It's Ray Road and Tom Short Road. You have the Somerset subdivision to the north, and the existing Marvin limits is in that purple, with Amber Meadows being the closest subdivision to the subject site. It's 28.11 acres. Currently, the property is in Union County. It's zone B2, PUD6. It's similar to a conditional zoning. It is approved for 275,000 square feet of commercial. We, again, are looking to annex into Marvin and rezone that to MU2. So if you look at the development plans, we've divided it into development areas. So in blue, we're going to have our single-family residential area. This is 13 single-family units. In the purple, we have our townhome section, which is 62 units. And then in the yellow is going to be our commercial area. In the next two slides, we'll show you the flexibility that we're seeking. But for each development area, there's a list of development standards. Devil's in the details. This is where your uses, your setbacks, your architectural standards, your stormwater, all the technical details for each development area are going to be in those development standards. So again, Ray Road is along the south. We got Tom Short to the east. We have our entrance off of Ray Road. This will be a tree-lined street as you enter into the property. We have both of our ponds to the southwest corner. As you enter into the single-family section, you can see this is the same land use pattern as the Somerset subdivision to the north. Then you get over into our townhome development section. This provides a diversity in housing, and if done right, you'll see through the elevations, density is not bad. This is a great transition from the back of the commercial to the single-family subdivision to the north. We provided a 20-foot type C landscape buffer. We have our commercial in the middle, and we'll provide a sidewalk along Ray Road. There's an existing sidewalk along Tom Short Road to make that pedestrian-friendly with the parking hidden in the back. When we say we're seeking flexibility, we do have a second site plan option. This limits us in the development standards for a anchor-type tenant. This is more of your like grocery store size. It's a maximum of 65,000 square feet. Again, the parking will be hidden in the back. We'll have landscape medians kind of throughout. You'll have your storefront, shops, walkable pedestrian type of shops in the front. This detail provides a little bit more for the access. We are proposing a signal at the entrance on the bottom left side of the plan. In the middle, this is going to be a right in, right out, left in. So no left.
Hunter, is there a way to point to where she's talking about so that we can?
Yep, I'm
It's
I'm
like being
pointing
on
up
the
here,
front
but I
row
don't
of a
think
movie
they can
theater,
see.
like, no. I can see the screen.
Yep,
Does anyone have a
so-
laser pointer?
So the middle access off of Ray Road, again, right in, right out, left in. And then a full movement intersection at Tom Short.
And does that, so that left end does not currently exist?
Correct, it's a divided median right now.
Okay.
You have the Lighthouse daycare center across the street.
And would there be additional space to pull in? I cannot remember the name of
Yep.
that. I should know that.
A
but-
decel or acceleration lanes.
Well, you know, that, so that
a right
they're
turn
getting
lane.
out of the way of traffic.
Correct. Yep,
And then you said a light, like in between the two wet ponds?
yep.
Okay,
The bottom
thank you,
left.
sorry.
Yep.
Keep going, I apologize.
Our TIA, we have started. We have not completed that as well, but we have the scoping done. So we'll be able to provide more information on any off-site traffic mitigations, turn lanes, decel acceleration lanes, access at your next meeting.
And Lisa, I'll add to, once again, a TIA is required for this because it is over the threshold for the trips per day of 3,000, which is NCDOT's minimum requirement. The applicant, you guys have what, Kimley and Horn? Yeah. They, we had a meeting with NCDOT as well as the applicant's team on the TIA scope. So they're in that's all been reviewed by the village and currently, I think, with DOT for initial comments on the scoping of it. And once that's completed, one's going to be provided. But it's required per NCDOT minimum threshold for the trip calculation.
It's still way under if it were still zoned Union County, unincorporated, correct?
What do you mean?
Like the trips per day, because they've got, instead of just 275,000 square feet of commercial, it's 165 plus.
That's correct. So when, I'm sorry, I didn't mean, I don't want to,
Go
but,
ahead. Absolutely.
so the history on this property is, some of you guys may have been on the board or aware, but back in 2014, they did come to the village for a similar request, annexation and conditional zoning. TIA was done at that time, and then they got, that application was pulled by the applicant, got the site plan that was shown a couple slides back for the 275,000 square feet of commercial approved through the county. TIA was done for that as well. And the current trip calculation for this proposed development is less than both of what the proposed trips for those two site plans, if that makes sense. So yes, it is less than what is would be currently proposed or if built through the county.
Here's some conceptual residential elevations. You guys are familiar with the Jones Homes product. The single-family product is up top. On the bottom is their townhome elevation. So you can see it has the varying roof lines, the variation, the articulation, kind of throughout the project. Here's some conceptual renderings for the commercial side. Again, varying roof lines, different materials, canopies, that pedestrian feel throughout. And then we provided some precedent imagery to show you the fountains and the open space and the character that we're looking to provide. You can see that residential feel with the roof line, the canopy, again, the open space. This is Robinson Farms, the residential feel, varying materials, space for children to play, and then a more conceptual image, just lifestyle and the character we're trying to build here with this project. Again, updated plan from what's approved in the county. We have residential adjacent to residential. It'll help self-police some of the commercial backup shop type of uses. We have overall decreased intensity of the development, reduction in commercial square footage. Instead of a regional type of shopping center, it's more of a neighborhood type of shopping center. And again, lower traffic generation. We did hold our community meeting March 31st. We had great feedback. We're hoping to get feedback from you all. Looking for a recommendation in May. Happy to meet with any residents that are here speaking tonight. We're happy to meet with you all. If you guys have questions, maybe through Hunter, please let us know. Again, devil's in the details, those development standards with all the architectural requirements, uses, it's all listed out in those. Take a close look at those, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Could I ask, the elevations of the single-family homes, the distance between the houses looks more than on the site plan. What's the setbacks between the houses proposed?
A minimum of 10 feet of separation total.
How much?
The minimum of 5 with a 10-foot separation total, minimum.
So just for reference, the 13 single-family lots are very similar to the Heritage at Marvin lot design, which the Heritage at Marvin was a minimum of 10,000 square feet, 70-foot wide, 5-foot side setbacks, 25 on the front, 25 on the rear. I don't have the MU2 district in front of me, but it's very similar in nature regarding the minimum setbacks there. And it would be a similar house product is what they're proposing.
So also same size and price point. Okay, but backed up to commercial. Because some of those do back up directly to commercial. Talking about $800,000, $900,000 house.
Hello, Lisa.
Hey, how are you?
Welcome back.
I'm good, thanks.
Can you, the obvious question, can you explain why you want to be annexed?
Yeah. David, do you want to explain the question? Yep. I mean, the main reason is liquor by the drink, provides better quality restaurants. Union County allows beer and wine, but doesn't allow liquor drinks, which the higher-end restaurants need to be successful, but I'll let you.
Sure. My name's David Miller. I'm with Rayleigh Miller Properties. There are several reasons why we are looking at annexing Marvin. And as Hunter had mentioned to you before, we considered annexing and rezoning into Marvin in 2014. So it's something that we have considered for a long, long time. There's several reasons. One, in the county, we have 275,000 square feet of zoning. And to be honest with you, we don't believe it makes sense at this point to build 275,000 square feet. And the zoning that's within the county is B4. B4 really doesn't allow, as it's written, for residential components unless the residential is built into the retail. For instance, something that would be multiple stories tall with retail on a ground level and residential above it, which we don't feel is as marketable in a suburban environment as it would be in an urban environment. So what we believe the better use at this point would be a combination of residential and commercial, reduce the amount of commercial, put a residential buffer between the existing residential and our commercial, which would address not all, but many of the needs and concerns that some of the adjacent neighbors had had about density and adjacency issues. Secondly, there is some prohibitions in Union County. Union County does allow for beer and wine to be sold, but it does not currently allow for liquor by the drink because Union County is dry and most of the municipalities within Union County are not. So some of the concerns that have been raised in the past was, well, if you don't have liquor by the drink, you know, how high end of a project could it be for restaurants, which is a large demand because most restaurants that are successful, full service sit down, are going to want to have liquor. And there's truth to that. And our zoning in the county allows us to put 9 out parcels, which I think 3 of them can be fast food restaurants. And again, we just think there's more potential for this property than that. And so having the liquor by the drink is an advantage. Third, at the time we looked at annexing this property back in 2014, Marvin did not have a mixed-use ordinance. And it was essentially an effort where we were having to write an ordinance for Marvin to deal with the type of project that Marvin wanted us to build at that time. It was very, very complicated, and at the end of the day, it didn't work, okay? Since that time, Marvin has adopted a new UDO, which dealt with many of the issues that were constraints to us back in 2014. And that mixed-use ordinance provides the opportunity for us to address many of those concerns. So in my mind, it's a combination of the revisions to your ordinance and the ability for that ordinance to address the type of ultimate property that should be developed. It's the market in terms of what is feasible going forward and the amount of density. It is liquor by the drink. It is how can we incorporate a residential component and do that as well. So it's a combination of efforts, but when you put them all together, it's a win-win, I think, for us and for the village of Marvin in terms of what it could be.
Has Harris Teeter approved this site?
In terms of a store, no. They have not yet.
Has it never been through their real estate committee?
Many times over 15 years. I don't think it's a secret to anybody in this room or to anybody at this council. Harris Teeter is our partner on this property. We own the land with them. We bought this land with them in 2008. Their intent was to put a store. We actually bought the land or developed the land with them across the street where Kohl's is, and they had planned to put a store there. They liked this site better. But again, between the recession of 2008, between their acquisition by Kroger, between a lot of other things, that store never got approved. And so now, you know, it begs the question, if this is a suburban neighborhood site and we don't have a grocery store anchor, then we don't want to build 275,000 feet of spec space, okay? And I don't think that's good for the market or good for us. Having said that, Harris Teeter is our partner. They want the right for a little bit longer to be able to make a decision to put a store there, which is why we presented the second alternative. I don't know if that will happen. We'd all like for it to happen. I think it would be a good location for them, but at the end of the day, it's their decision, and they have not made that decision yet.
I have a couple of questions.
I want to add one thing real quick on that is once again, what's being proposed is, as part of this rezoning, is kind of like you have these 2 site-specific plans, but then it's more of the development nodes, kind of showing the total square footage and buildings. One thing that can be discussed, I've already kind of mentioned to the applicant, you know, obviously this site plan that's on the screen has that 65,000 square foot building. Once again, it's a conditional zoning, mixed use 2. It would probably be something where, you know, if the applicant agrees, and then we would go through the table of uses, potentially restrict what uses can be in that building if they build it, the site plan 2 compared to the first one. But once again, this is all kind of the first introduction of this, but that's stuff I want the planning board to kind of think about. And after this meeting, I would definitely recommend going through the MDO, and we'll go into detail with the staff report at the next meeting, but look at the permitted uses for the mixed-use 2 district in Article 8, as well as the information on the mixed-use district in Article 8 as well, would be strongly recommended prior to the next meeting.
I have a couple questions, and I don't know if you can answer these. It might be
I'll try.
It might be Jones Homes. So does the plan work without townhomes? If those townhomes were switched to more single-family homes?
No, in my opinion, no.
Yeah, come on up.
I'll let Rob talk about it, but the short answer to that question is no.
Because you know that Marvin does not like townhomes like this.
It does not, I mean, it doesn't work for us.
Okay. All right. And then the buffering, how do you guys envision, because obviously this is just a graphic, but, and a couple trees probably isn't going to do it, but how do you really envision the buffering between the retail and the commercial? If you're going to put an $800,000-$900,000 house, how are you going to keep them from their backyard looking at a parking lot or the back of the building?
This is Mark Kimes with our civil engineer.
Hi, so Mark Heim, Civil and Environmental Consultants. The buffering we're proposing, we're going to try and match the standards of what we're proposing in the Type C buffer, where you have essentially, I think, as Hunter said, it's a 60% opaque screen. If it's going to be a combination of a interior wall or thick vegetative planting, I don't think we've quite fleshed that out, but I mean, it is a benefit to the residents who are back up against that commercial to have as much privacy as possible. So it's something I know Jones will absolutely want for their product. So I don't think that detail has been quite fleshed out, but it would be buffered.
Okay.
The other thing I would say, there's a pretty significant amount of existing vegetation between those townhomes and the homes that are along Somerset there. It varies in different areas. It gets a little thinner as it gets over to Tinton Hole, just because that street is a stub street. But for a significant part of that site, along the edges, there's some pretty good existing vegetation that is savable and will be saved.
Yeah, and I was actually more I know that we have a lot, stricter, obviously, buffer ordinances between Somerset and this property. My concern was really the commercial piece and the residential piece. Like, how do you? It's just you just can't see it on here. So I'll just wait for you guys to.
Internal to the site, yes.
Yeah. Can I have one more? I have one more question about buffering for the out parcels. So the out parcels, where is the entrance? Are those facing the road? Are the entrances facing the road? Are they internally facing? And if they're internally facing, how do you plan on masking the backs of the buildings? Because we right now have to we get to see the Starbucks and the nail salon and all the other things in front of the Kohl's. We get to see all their like trash cans and stuff when we drive by, and it's doesn't really look very great.
The buildings will front the parking lot for the entrance, obviously, because that's where the parking is. However, what the other side of the building is facing the street, what you are currently calling the back, will definitely have streetscapes to it. And similar to some of the images that we showed you earlier that were in the package, but I'll let, this is Charles, I'll let you pronounce your last name again because I always butcher it. Charles is with Robbie Johnson Architects. He's our architect. And I'll let him discuss a little bit about how we plan on providing some streetscape to the front of to the Ray Road side of the building.
Yeah, so my name is Charles Cochabotto. I'm with Robert Johnson Architects, and basically, to speak to your concern, as far as locating utilities and some of the more unsightly items that, generally speaking, are going to be on any building, there's no avoiding it. Typically, we try to locate them in the least visually impacting area. On these particular buildings here, with the front of the building facing the parking area there, We'd be looking to locate the infrastructure for the buildings on the rear or on the sides of the facade. And typically what we'll do to screen that is similar to what David was just alluding to, is some landscaping and more visually impactful areas, like maybe facing the street. We have and we do regularly provide some sort of screen wall element, and it's not even uncommon that we'll, depending on, once we get into the engineering of the project, maybe even locating a lot of that equipment on the screen wall, so it's just entirely concealed from view. So that's something we work out as we get into the design of the engineering of the project. So it's something we take pretty seriously a lot of time. Our office is kind of prides itself on the fact that we practice four-phase architecture, so we aren't trying to just put everything on one side of the building and just forget about it. We try to consider that pretty carefully on all of our projects. So
That's great. Thank you. I appreciate it. Sorry.
I think I know the answer to this, but this is sort of, curious to know your thoughts on buffering residential with more residential.
my opinion?
Well, whoever wants to speak. I've just not seen that approach before, and, I mean, curious to know how that works in your mind.
A lot of work, our office does work in a lot of different jurisdictions, and especially in the city of Charlotte, where we run into this instance quite a bit, and this is more of a transition neighborhood where you have, a commercial center, and then you get into a little higher density housing, and then it eventually devolves into lower density housing. So the combination of the heritage product with the townhomes really creates that transition from the commercial to the single family versus the previous plan, which really just put the backside of large box stores right up against the single family. So this really works as a good transition between those two uses.
I was also going to mention, oops, might have been that?
No, I was just, so once again, this is what is currently proposed in the county, and you can see those larger buildings and everything closer to the existing residential. So what their plan is proposing, once again, is buffering with a residential product to an existing residential subdivision as part of their proposed development.
Yeah, I thought part of the answer would be that the new residents are moving into the neighborhood knowing what they're moving into.
That's what I was just going to say.
That was my thought, too.
That's what I was going to say.
Is there been any, and this would be between you guys and Somerset, but, and they may not want it, but just any kind of access from Somerset so it would be walkable for them so that they're not cutting, and they might say, nope, we don't want any access, or they might, you never know. So has that been broached? Actually, please don't. Please don't call out.
There has been conversations with Somerset in particular about access between the Somerset neighborhood and this project. Back in 2014, in 2015, and now. It is not our desire, and it is, I'll let people for Somerset speak, but it is certainly not Somerset's desire to have access, pedestrian or driving, between these two parcels. And there's a lot of reasons for it.
You don't have to explain. I mean, if that's the
Okay, but
agreement,
we-
I'm glad that you guys have made it happen.
Let me put it this way, as a developer, both of us, Rob and I, and the neighborhood, we're all on the same page on this issue. Not that we're apart on a whole lot, but certainly on this issue. There's not going to be any driving or pedestrian access between those two parcels.
Okay, that's great.
If you'll see the green space up that abuts, that's marked green space, that's roughly a half acre, and that will be a pocket park. So we obviously do not want, we're going to put a combination of either thick vegetation and a wall, or just thick vegetation. And that was one of the requests we heard the night of the community meeting.
Great.
And I would like to add, so once again, this does have an approved site plan. It's part of through the county, it's part of a planned unit development and a special use permit. One of those conditions of that special use permit that was approved through the county would be that the applicant/developer provide that vehicular access if the residents of Somerset want it. As they mentioned, based off the neighborhood meeting discussion, it does not seem like they want it. So in short, some of those conditions that part of their existing plan would probably be incorporated in, but that would be one, once again, like, we're not, if the residents of Somerset don't want it, it's not anything that I think from a staff level we're going to be requiring.
I'm just glad the conversations have happened, so.
I'm just curious, have you guys done some type of impact analysis to the school system here or spoken to the school?
Yes, so we hired an independent consultant to run a school impact study. This is a consultant who doesn't live in the area, they're 2 states away, so they're not part of this discussion as far as the local picture. So what they do is they use a decennial census of the population of the number of homes in both the Ray Elementary School and in Marvin Ridge Middle and the Marvin Ridge High School. And they also use 2023 census data looking at the next 5 years. And what they do is they take the average price point of the homes that are being proposed, and they also look at the population of students per household that are feeding those schools. So at this time, they came back and said the preschool would have about 4 added students. The elementary school would have another 4 added students, 2 students to the middle school and 3 to the high school. And then we're going to go ahead and take that report, share that with Union County Public Schools.
75 That's, yeah. And in,
Please do not call out. We will have
Okay.
you removed.
This is enough. We've had this multiple meetings in a row now where the audience is choosing to interrupt. You are breaking state law when you do that. If you cannot sit here and act like an adult, you can go home and watch the meeting on YouTube like everyone else. Please respect this board.
So this is a professional who's been used for consulting for several projects, many projects in the Union County area. She's got 25 to 30 years of experience. And it's required in certain jurisdictions, so we stand by her report and we'll include it in our submission.
Does this person also consult the Union County Public School Board? Like, how do they get their data? Do you know what their process is? I mean, I don't want a detailed process analysis, but.
I'd have to get you an answer on that. I don't exactly know.
also, when you're getting that information, I heard you say they use some type of forecasting model, but do they use, that's just an analytical model? Are they looking, have they come to here to understand what's in progress or what's proposed?
So those projections are 2035 projections, and it takes into account existing development and proposed development and a growth factor.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to add that, once again, and I don't know if I included their school impact in your guys' packets. If not, it will be included. It is for the 2034, 35, so there are, ups and downs regarding school population and as well as the build-out of this development if approved. But it was something that was also brought up during the neighborhood meeting, and I do believe there was that same comment or discussion of like, hey, has Union County Public Schools reviewed or have any comment? And we'll make sure to get that comment prior to the next meeting.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, we'll be providing minutes for you guys as well.
I would like to address one thing. I'm not on any social media. My mother tells me what is on there. Evidently, somebody has posted I guess that's the right word, is it? Something on Neighbor, the next door neighbor, whatever it is, that says we're clearing already and knocking down trees. As part of our due diligence, what we have to do is do soil borings. And if you see a video, that's what it is. We have to have a machine to get back there to cut a strip from Mark and I so that we can get back there and do soil boring. So we're not, I just want to make, if you guys hear that, that's,
Thank you for
my
clarifying.
mother told me that.
To address some of the public comments, there's some vagueness in our plans. The development standards are legally binding, and the site plan, although we're asking for the ability to move, the commercial square footage around, the parking envelopes are pretty much set. The roads kind of throughout are somewhat set, but those development standards are legally binding. If we wanted to come back and make a major amendment or change number of homes, go higher in density, we'd have to come back through this public process, and redo the community meeting and go back through this process.
And I know this isn't like the property over on Ray, like our commercial property over on Ray with the Publix, but as the out parcels get built, would they have to come back in just for design review? So it's not quite like how we
No.
deal with Marvin Gardens.
The Marvin Gardens one, once again, we had that design review board, a part of the old ordinance, and that was one of the conditions and approvals. And there, Marvin Gardens is its own individual conditional zoning district, has its own set of zoning standards, steps, all that stuff. This would be a conditional zoning, but still tied with the mixed-use district to an extent. Unless that's some type of mutually agreed upon condition, it wouldn't have, the out parcels as developed, they would have, as Lisa was saying, like, the development standards are binding. In those development standards, you would have probably maximum building square footage and stuff we've discussed. The elevation's already tied to it. Potential limit in certain uses is something else that can, maybe be added. But you then kind of create that vision. Once again, there's this fine line of having that control and having it figured out, but having the flexibility from the developer standpoint, but then not having too much flexibility and not having that vision set. So all that stuff's already been discussed with the applicant and will be kind of all incorporated in their development standards. If there's anything you want to add, are you good? Okay.
Are there any, I saw like the sketch of the commercial buildings. I understand what the residential, we have a really good sense of what the residential would look like, but in terms of the commercial, like the design aspects of the commercial, it's just hard to tell what that, it could be beautiful, but, we'd like to see materials.
So basically, what we'd be looking at is variation of materials, variation of parapet heights, variation of roof planes and roof types. I think we'd be using a good amount of masonry. Basically what we're trying to avoid is we're not proposing any blank facades. We're trying to really just make the buildings very interesting in appearance. Lots of glazing, lots of glass, canopies, just a lot of interest and activity along the facades. So these are just some rough sketches of the style we're trying to aim for, basically. And you'd have some single story with some faux second story elements, some two-story buildings. So I think there'd be quite a bit of variation between the different buildings in the commercial side of things.
And I just wanted to make one point about the two-story versus the one-story. This is something that came up in the community meeting. Of that 165,000, that includes second story. So obviously we don't know what the footprints of each building are going to be, but it's not 165,000 and then we could put another 165,000 on top.
It's not 165 footprint.
Right.
That's good to know, thank you. Anybody else have any other questions before we let these folks sit down?
Is there anything you guys?
Thank you.
Again, happy to meet with whoever. If you guys want to get Hunter some questions, happy to answer those ahead of the next meeting, and thank you for your
And
time.
can we get the presentation that because the documents that we have, did you get the presentation later, so we didn't have them in our packets?
Yeah, so they submitted a updated presentation. I think what's in your packets is very similar. Lisa, I think you said you updated 2 slides.
Don't have as many.
Yep, the only
the
change
photos.
is to this commercial plan, sorry, it's not. The change in this drive aisle for truck movements to be able to get around, kind of back in and get out. That's the only change was to this site plan to add this entrance right here.
And then the sketch, the commercial building sketch.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
If any resident is here from the Somerset subdivision and would like more information on this project, you can visit our website at marvinnc.gov, and if you have questions on how to find it from there, you can find me at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
So, and once again, before we move on, once again, this is kind of the preliminary introduction. Staff will have our report as well as the, kind of the more detailed with the rezoning packet for you guys to consider at the next meeting. There already have had discussions based off some of the feedback and stuff received at the neighborhood meeting, and feedback and stuff, that the staff's provided to the applicant. I'm working on some of the conditions or getting those incorporated in. So all that will be packaged together for your guys' consideration at the next meeting.
Cool, thank you. All right. Perform the function of design review board to review the plans for the Whataburger project located at Marvin Gardens out parcel 3.
This is something you guys have not done in a long time.
I didn't even know Whataburger was in North Carolina.
So the village has received a not rezoning, sorry, said rezoning way too many times tonight, has received a zoning permit application to develop out parcel 3 at Marvin Gardens. The proposal is for a Whataburger location to be located on out parcel 3. Marvin Gardens, as I mentioned in the last agenda item, Marvin Gardens is its own individual conditional zoning district, originally approved back in 2016. A part of their zoning standards and approval processes is all out parcel, building design, all that stuff goes through the design review process. That design review board process was a part of the old ordinance, which I did include a reference to that in your guys' packages, as well as the Marvin Gardens ICD development standards. So this is the first introduction type thing. This is what was submitted. I will say that the applicant went thoroughly through the Marvin Gardens ICD language. I know that there may be some comments, questions regarding the aesthetics of the building. The main thing I want DRB to focus on is the aesthetics of the building, the landscape and overall kind of site design, because the rest of that kind of falls right into zoning, as well as engineering or engineering compliance. This has been sent to our engineer for review. Overall, the out parcel 3 was like the grading, infrastructure, all that stuff was outside of the parking and all that. Like, it was initially graded and all that as part of the original site development. So when you go, is this the DRB set? Or is this the full set? Yeah, I've reduced it. Just want to get the kind of the site plan, and we'll kind of go through. My goal tonight, because the applicant is, the design firm is not here nor online, I want to get any initial comments and questions from the board. If you guys feel comfortable and think that it aligns with, the architectural standards and stuff for the Marvin Gardens, then you guys, as DRB, can make that motion to approve. Once again, the way DRB works is that planning board acts as DRB. You guys are the approval and denial or authority. It just goes to council and they affirm whatever decision you guys make. High level use wise, once again, the use for a drive-through and fast food restaurant is a permitted use on this out parcel. The overall site with parking and the way it's laid out does comply with the regulations in the Marvin Gardens ICD. There are a few minor things regarding like the drive aisle that do need to be addressed by the applicant. On the site plan, you can see the little white hatchling is the drive-through lane, but it is a double drive-through, and per the Marvin Gardens ICD requirements, is technically both drive-through lanes have to be a different like material, like a concrete or something. So they would need to then enhance that outer one that you guys see on your screen to comply with that. The then outer lane is the drive aisle lane, kind of like the pass-through lane, which does comply with the minimum standards for that. Any questions kind of on the overall kind of just site proposal?
Where do you start?
Excuse me. Let me-
Go ahead, John.
Well, start off with, one of my first questions you evidently answered, but you said that they received the development standards. It doesn't look like they paid any attention to them to me.
In regards to the architectural design?
Well, several things, starting off, and I'm not nitpicking, I actually read the standards, but on page 10, it said parking stalls may not be placed between the building and a public right-of-way.
Well, so that is true, and so then there's another section that does allow it. Once again, it's how ordinances are, it's great, especially when you literally develop a set of ordinance standards from scratch. I mean, the Marvin Garden, I don't know if anybody on planning board here was a part of that process, but I think it was about a 2-year process.
Rich might have been.
But it does, that was one of the first things that we noticed here in our review. Do you have the? Yeah. But then on like page 28, when it gets into screening and parking areas for drive aisles, it states drive-through lane, or it says parking stalls and drive aisles may only be located adjacent to, or may only be located adjacent to a public right-of-way. When the facilities are screened, a detailed landscape plan shall be reviewed and approved by the DRB. So yes, it says that on page 8, but then it states that it can be as long as it's adequately screened. And I believe in the packets does have a preliminary planting and landscape plan. There it is. They sent us the full plans, 180 pages, so I tried to take out the significant ones and put this together. But as you can see here, they do have detailed landscape and plantings being proposed there along the parking lot in Providence. So therefore, it would allow for parking stalls to be along that. The other thing to note here is that drive-through, the screening for drive-through lanes is also required. You can see there in the center of the top, they are screening, putting additional screenings there to basically screen the drive-through from out parcel 2, which is where Dunkin' Donuts and everything is at.
And, then of course, it speaks to architectural design quite a bit, which, looks like standard Whataburger elevations, don't even come close.
Architectural was probably the biggest thing during our review that we were kind of like, it doesn't fully line up.
It doesn't even come close, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's the brick color, but yeah, 100%. The things that we noted, and Polmy did a great job in her review of this, is the roof pitches where in the architectural designs it talks about having varied roof pitches. It's a flat roof. It does, with this being a DRB review and approval, it's your interpretation, meaning that I think we're all kind of aligned on that it doesn't fully line up with the Marvin Gardens ICD architectural standards, and that is 100% okay. Meaning that, we can provide those comments and feedback back to the applicant to revise their architectural design. However, at the same time, you guys can still approve it as is. I'm not saying you have to. I'm not recommending that you do. This is the initial discussion, but that the DRB is tasked with basically reviewing if it's compliant or consistent with that. I don't, once again, Whataburger is a chain. This would be, I think, their 3rd or 4th location that's been proposed in the North Carolina area, at least the Charlotte area, over the last couple of months. So I'm not sure if this is kind of one of their standard prototypical layouts and design, or if they have other elevations that would be more of a fit for this. But like I said, they did go through the ordinance because it's pretty compliant with the ICD, and they even reference it numerous times throughout their proposal here. However, yeah, I think the way that architectural stuff reads is it has material and it's got color palette and certain things like that, but this is where you kind of get into an interesting little dynamic with having a national chain.
Yeah, but I mean, like, just page, oh Lord, I don't know what page I'm on. Third, I'm on 3rd. It clearly states, vision and architecture, Marvin Gardens will enhance community's connection to homes. So to its agrarian and equestrian roots, acting together, the homes and shops will strengthen the sense that this is a place with a unique history. The character of the buildings drawn inspiration from the forms of country barns, small town shops, and classic farmhouses, and bring those forms to the present. There's nothing, not one thing on that Whataburger exterior that says, equestrian, agrarian, country barn, none of it. So slap some shingles on there. I mean, something, you gotta give. I mean, you can't just stick your,
Then you
throw
also,
the same thing all over North Carolina and expect people to say.
Trust me, that we already noted
Bring it
this.
on.
DRB has to say, so when I was waiting for your guys' comments and feedback to be able to share back with the applicant.
Circle that section,
yeah,
and
and then you
highlight it.
throw in the signage requirements as well.
So speaking of signage, The elevations have the signage, however, it was conveyed to the applicant that they would have to submit their signage plans because there's no, you see them in the elevations, but there's no actual signage plan showing the square foot, you know, the dimensions of the signs. Like similar to what you guys saw with Duncan was the most recent one you guys reviewed about a year and a half, 2 years ago. So therefore, this signage plan would have to come back through the DRB process. It's already been conveyed to the applicant that it's recommended to go ahead and get those signage plans. The way that they are operating is you have Whataburger, then you have somebody, a franchisee, and then you have one firm doing the construction architectural drawings, and then they have a different firm doing the signage. So it's already been requested, but you know, if it is then provided prior to the May meeting, because it seems like obviously we're not approving this tonight, then it'll be packaged together. If not, you guys can approve it, and then obviously you're still going to have to then review the signage plan. They're going to have to get that approved by DRB before signs are installed.
How did the other buildings in the existing, how did the other existing buildings get around these issues? Because let me finish my question, please. I didn't, when I go in that shopping center, it doesn't look like, well, listen to Kelly just read what Harvard Heritage is supposed to look like. That shopping center doesn't look like that at all.
I don't think the Publix doesn't have those like elements to it.
Well, that's my question. I mean, are we talking about adding cosmetic things to their standard design, or?
So the way
you had the same issue. What I'm saying is you got a Dunkin' Donuts in there now, right?
Mm-hmm.
What did they do to their design to
the
get around
way
these issues?
the way this all happened is, once again, the design standard you're reading was approved in 2016. They are guides / standards. However, every new building has to then be approved by DRB. In 2018, I think it was, Publix came for their actual elevations and architectural design for the Publix building, and building 1 and 2, which building 1's where the Great Clips and Marco's at, and then building 2 is the one where the El Tecate and Nail Salon is at. Those went through this same process. They provided renderings and elevations. There were slight variations from what you obviously see in the 2016 design standards, but those were approved through DRB and affirmed by council. 7-Eleven came through the same thing in 2021, roughly when I was starting. I think you guys actually reviewed it before I started, and then or you requested more information or a slight change. But I remember my first planning board meeting, that was on the agenda, and you guys approved those elevations. Out Parcel 2 then came later in 2021. Once again, proposed that building, which had three commercial spaces in it with a drive-through lane. Once again, they provided the elevations, the color, the material, and all that went through DRB, and it was approved. For the most part, there is similar characteristics, I will say, but there is no maybe straight, consistent design form of it. And that's just how the district was set up. Every single building just has to come through DRB approval. So that's why this feedback and stuff that we're discussing is very important. So it's to help create that more consistent feel of what that development was supposed to really be intended to look like.
Because my personal view is if it fits in with the other buildings generally, I think it's fine. If we apply these standards strictly to that, word for word like we're quoting now, it's going to stand out in the opposite direction. We're going to have a French colonial building in the middle of a bunch of commercial buildings, and it's going to look bad by contrast in my mind.
And that's, like I said, that's where the fine line of and going through this, I think there is a better mix to help incorporate in some of the existing color and building design from the Publix building, those additional buildings, and then Out Parcel 2 and the 7-Eleven. Because one thing here is, like, once again, you have that metal or, metal not awning, but around the top. That isn't consistent. I don't know. I mean, the material maybe because the Out Parcel 2 it's more of a, structure like Village Hall. It's white, has the metal roof, kind of like an old farm structure type thing. So It's more maybe the color of the building. Same thing, you have brick here, where a lot of those other buildings, you have a stone facade. And so that's kind of the two biggest differences that you see.
And roof line?
And roof line is another one, because you have varied roof pitches. Even on the 7-Eleven, it's a flat roof, but if you look at it, it still has the architectural design of pitched from the back and front, I believe. So, and you have, in a way, that here with the entrance there being a little higher pitched than the other roof line, but it's still, once again, it's open for interpretation and discussion as part of this. Yeah,
Have you asked the applicant to sort of try to accommodate those designs, or this is our first look at that?
This is your first look. Once again, these are all comments that Polemy and I have already kind of went through and noted, but the DRB process it is kind of, I guess, subjective or opinion. I mean, you guys have standards. Everybody can kind of read those in one way. You can also you're applying standards of what's there currently. It's for it to be consistent. That's why it goes through this process. So no, I've not provided any comments until you guys give me some direction, so I can incorporate it all in and work with them to kind of gain that consistency.
Even like the metal work and stuff is different. I mean, so I totally get you. I don't shop in that shopping center a lot because it's so far away from my house, but you know, the surround of the pond, I mean, there are elements of it. They don't look country, they don't look like barns, but there are elements. So like, even if you just look at this Whataburger, this is kind of like quasi-modern, kind of quasi-retro 60s, and like just the metal handrail is just very different than what any of the other structures have. I've never actually, I don't remember seeing a Whataburger
So
in my travels. Like, I don't know if that Whataburger sign is usually internally lit. Like, they'll have to come back and,
Like I said, the sign, I know you guys have questions on the signs, we do too, but the signage isn't necessarily part of this application. They would have to, once again, either submit it and it can be all reviewed at once, but if not, they would have to come back and get their specific signage approved. It's the same thing, I mean, out parcel 2 where Duncan's at, the building and building elevations got approved, and then the tenant came in and proposed their signage plan to you guys, that you guys reviewed and approved as DRB as well.
I mean, in my view, if you got a 7-Eleven and a Dunkin' Donuts in there already, and they've figured out a way to make it work, I don't think we should hold Whataburger to a higher standard than them. I think as long as it's sort of consistent with what we've asked the others to do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a planned use residential community. It's a pure, I mean, commercial play. Now, that being said, I don't shop there either, so I haven't actually gone with a fine-tooth comb and looked at what do we do, how different is this than a normal 7-Eleven, or how different is this than a normal, Dunkin' Donuts?
I'll define fine-tooth comb. Fun fact is that the 7-Eleven stone is completely different than the stone on the Publix. If you look at it from afar, it's consistent or looks similar, but when you get up to it, it's
But how
finer.
different is it to their standard outlook, their standard building?
pretty different.
Yeah, for 7-Eleven, I would say it's definitely different from their normal. And that, you kind of mentioned it's not a plan, this is basically a plan unit development. I mean, that's what the planning has changed, but plan unit developments were basically conditional zoning before conditional zoning kind of was a thing. Because you are then setting your site-specific plan with building elevations and proposed uses. So you are kind of setting those standards. It is a nice fine line because you have zoning standards here, but you also have Publix, who is the owner of all the land. Like, Publix will still own the property. It's a lease to build the suite, and they've leased in the building. So they have standards in their CCNRs or whatever that line up with the Marvin Gardens ICD language. But there's still some inconsistencies. A prime example of this is that, and I'll say it, signage. The ICD language says prohibits raceways. Publix, who owns all those buildings, wants raceways because it protects the building, the asset of the building, instead of having the sign straight to the facade. And, if a tenant changes and they take that sign off, then you have where it's faded or something like that. And so it helps the building. And that's something that, we're looking at potentially amending these ICD language, but there are some of those inconsistencies because ultimately there's zoning that's in play, but you have a property owner that has development standards and requests for their buildings and their assets to, that don't necessarily line up with the zoning.
Because the cynic in me says that, you know, Whataburger's a major corporation. They just gave us their standard facade. And now they're going to get this feedback. Rather than meeting us halfway, they're going to get credit for all the concessions they make.
I
off
think
of what they've done now. So, in a sense, I don't blame them for doing that. If I was their attorney, I would, or their land use planner, I would, you know, it's a strategy. But just what Kelly showed me, that, you know, the Dunkin' Donuts does not look like a standard Dunkin' Donuts to me either.
And I think here, and this is just my opinion, based off of how the language reads and looking at the existing conditions of the buildings already built, is that you could supplement the brick for hardy plank, do some type of maybe stone, kind of similar to the 7-Eleven on the corners, or even some type of hybrid of stone in the hardy plank. And then potentially, I don't really necessarily have a recommendation for the top.
The roof line, I mean, Duncan has somewhat of a flat roof, but they've got.
It still has elevated roof lines, yeah.
They've got vertical, you know, plank on the walls, I mean, like on the exterior walls. So if you look at you back away from the commercial area as a whole, it's all, except for that one section of Duncan, all the roof lines are pitched, but none of them are flat. So that would just look very strange.
And to be fair, I think you need to let them know that the signage needs to, we're going to apply the same standard on
Yep.
signage. Or they're not going to get their standard. 7-Eleven didn't get it, Dunkin' Donuts didn't get it.
So
Even their color schemes are not going to be.
I think, so one thing, and to the note on the signage, and this actually came up with the Duncan, there will probably be an amendment proposed or made to the ICD language regarding signage. And a prime example is that the permitted wall-mounted signs are limited to 2 for all these developments. That's why the Duncan has one on the side, or one over the front of the entrance, and one on the side, and not one on the rear. It kind of looks dumb, in my opinion, because the way that out parcel 2 is sitting, it has dual visibility from the intersection of Providence and Newtown, as well as coming from Providence, heading towards Charlotte. And so, you know, Duncan's asked me that they've had, I guess, some, when I say concern, I guess people state to them that it's not the easiest to find or whatever, and it's it's some of the signage, because if you're coming from that intersection, you see Yoga 6, but you don't then see Duncan on the backside. So a text amendment is probably going to be proposed to allow for an additional wall signage, and it could be kind of, you know, geared towards if it's got kind of that double frontage or the visibility, something along those lines. Same thing here, the signage that's being proposed in these elevations.'s again, I don't have their signage plans. These could just be standard elevations, but obviously it's not consistent with the signage. They have 3 wall-mounted signs that say Whataburger on all 3 frontage, and then they have the architectural kind of signage over the entryway, and then they have another sign, I think, on the back side of the building. So it technically doesn't comply with the signage. So once again, we're not reviewing the signage from this standpoint, but there might be some revisions that need to be made to the ICD for clarification. Not saying that it's going to then allow them to get the signage like this, but it may be able to then kind of expand on that. A prime example, 7-Eleven, once again, I think this is part of the reason that it got delayed, if I recall. 7-Eleven came back and proposed an amendment to the ICD language that allowed that second signage on the back side of the building that has the fuel prices. And it got, if you look in the language, or the ICD language, I think, somewhere on page.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the 7-Eleven parcel has basically its own set of rules and stuff.
Yeah, for signage. And so what they did is they came back and amended this and basically incorporated their signage plan in, just like Publix did at the beginning. So that is something you could foresee happen here. Not saying you guys have to approve it, but once again, you might, that greater detail than to be compliant with the standards would basically be done through the proposal of a text amendment for the ICD language.
My personal view on signage is that their standard signage is designed for what you see when you get off of a highway off-ramp, and there's 17 fast food stores, and they're all trying to get you to turn here. If Whataburger is going to be as popular as I suspect it will be, people will find it. They don't need to see a 50-foot sign, you know, above the tree line saying, you know, here we are. That's my own 2 cents. I think they'll figure out a way to get comfortable with signage that's, consistent with what's there now.
When we were approving, I know on the council side, when we were approving 7-Eleven, I remember the young lady that had come to represent 7-Eleven, and we were throwing out her, you know, we'd like to see this, we'd like to see that. I assume the same thing's going to happen here during the process, that somebody's going to come and discuss the elevations and the appearance and all that?
Yeah, so these elevations were received last week or the end of the week before, so we've only had them for about 10 days. The reason I wanted to, you guys have not been through the DRB process, especially to this capacity with a new building in over 3 years. So I did not ask the applicant to be here tonight. I wanted to kind of, once again, an initial review, kind of go over the DRB procedure, get some initial comments and feedback. I'm going to take all this, get this to them this week to see if they want to revise elevations, and then I'm going to recommend that they be here in person to kind of have that further conversation. So, and so like what it would look like is then at the May meeting, hopefully they would have revised elevations, somebody here. If those elevations and everything are more consistent with that vision and what you guys interpret it to be consistent with, you guys can approve it. If not, then, you know, the applicant will hear that directly, incorporate it in, and then come back in June for that approval.
I know that this is not design review board, but could you just, I'm trying to understand where the roads are, like,
go to the site plan.
It's a little confusing as to exactly where these entrances and exits are dumping into, and it does not look like a good design in terms of like, I mean, I can just see people running into each other.
So,
double lane and
just for kind of like orientation here, to the north where that north drive aisle or connector is at, that is connecting into the parking lot of the Dunkin' Donuts. So that little where it kind of spurs off up there to the right, like top left, like going this way, that's their drive-through lane. So there would be a, you know, little connector drive up through or connection between the properties there. The other access is then there, which is on the private road, which is entering, it's that little side road at Publix, not, how do I say this, like a little south of this intersection, you have the signaled interchange where the Marvin Gardens sign is at. And then if you're driving north towards Charlotte, then you pass this intersection, or this little ingress, egress, right in, right out. So that's where their two or their two accesses are off that private road and through the existing side of out parcel 2.
So where that hand is that you've got there, is that where Dunkin' Donuts is?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
and it comes like,
Pull up GIS.
I mean, like it, I don't even know how that, there's gonna have to be some serious, just right-of-way signage around there, because if you've got two lanes dumping out and people entering and another commercial property having folks exit, there's just a lot going on right in that little corner, so.
So, and that's something that we,
I know that's not design review board, but it's just like
It,
pretty glaring.
it's somewhat, so we noted that during our review. Yeah, you can get so a little far. And then pan up a little bit. So obviously, in this aerial from GIS, the Dunkin's not being constructed, or is not completed, but you can see. What the
Yeah, and I've got, I mean,
Oh,
I've
it's 'cause
got
you
it up.
clicked.
If you go to the, if you go to 1600 Providence Road South,
On Google Maps?
Google Maps,
Let's
and
go
do
Google Maps.
a street view, you can see very clearly where the Dunkin' drive-through is and how those things would be merging.
And, you know, you bring
We'll be
up,
going the exact same direction, so it's like, you know,
you,
yield.
that was
yield to
something
the
that we
donut.
noted too. You don't, from a design standpoint, I don't think you move the primary access to the main road there, because then you would have, like, Marvin Gardens Drive, the interior road of Marvin Gardens, because then you have the drive access into out parcel 2, and then you have this 3 road right here that connects back to Providence. However, based off, like, Polomi and I talked about this, is if you then try to orient the building differently and set up the drive-through, then you're kind of messing with where the drive-through starts, which you don't want the drive-through to start at that entrance, because then stacking doesn't work. So the way it is actually set up probably makes the most sense. Not saying it's perfect. Honestly, I think them being located on out parcel 4 would be better, but once again, not my call. Which out parcel 4 is the one there on the south side. It's just bigger, and I think would provide a little bit better ingress, egress access and site design. With all that being said, yeah, like if you orient the building, you're then going to mess with how the drive-through sets up, then that can mess like where the park. There's a lot of things, because we looked at that, and there's really no perfect way to do it. So the way it is designed is, and this is even something I noted, is like if you think about like a Chick-fil-A and how they have the 2 drive-through lanes, like when you enter the site, and even though their mini boards and their stacking starts right there, it still needs to actually probably have some type of, like, you have to go around the building or you have to go around to kind of get in the initial stacking lane. There is sufficient with the double drive-through lane stacking. It's not like a one single, as well as the distance between the menu boards and the ordering to the window.
Do
compliant.
they merge?
Yes. If you want to go back to the site. Actually, no. That's another question I
That's the
have.
thing that's so confusing, because like, at Cookout, you have 2 lanes, and one you have to stop, and then you yield the right of way, and then you take a left, and they still have issues, and then at Chick-fil-A, everything merges into one, so like, this is like 2 lanes.
It's 2 lanes,
that
and it
left
doesn't
lane's
show it merging. I'm not, some Chick-fil-A's now, even the newer ones, they've actually went away from the drive-through, and it's like a drive door, and their staff is out. They come out with your food. So it's showing a drive-through window. It would have to have some type of merging capability. That's once again a note that we've already made from when you order to then merge over into the drive-through lane. That's the other thing too, is that if you're merging, you think about, because right where the hand's at, where the mouse is at, go back to that's where you're ordering. So it is kind of close to the window. So there's sufficient stacking for the actual drive-through to comply when you enter the drive-through lanes, but where you order to when then you get the food is not a very large distance. And so that's even one thing that's potentially, we've noted, is looking at moving the actual ordering menu boards and all that, in the, whatever you call it, back a little bit to then create a more adequate stacking and merging of the lanes.
But we don't have any jurisdiction over how they manage their flow inside their own parking lot.
Kind of.
Or do we?
You kind of do. I mean, there's standards.
I don't know. I would assume they know how
Did
to
with Dunkin'.
run a drive-through at their restaurants. They've done it.
We did at Publix. They had their
Yeah.
drive-through pharmacy, like going right out with no stop sign. They're going to hit pedestrians. We were like,
Well, I don't see that concern here where, I mean.
No, I mean, well, I
We're not talking about public safety here. This is just, cars are gonna be going 1 mile an hour waiting for their food.
yeah, I'm just,
I mean, we can certainly ask the question. I just don't know whether we have any real power to tell them what to do.
Once again, you guys
Or
you
suggest.
have to approve the design, so legally, I don't know what that means, because I still find the DRB process was very interesting in general, and kind of what that purview actually meant. And I know we've had that discussion numerous times before it wasn't incorporated into the MDO. But yes, when we were looking at the out parcel 2 design, we did know that it was going to be a Dunkin'. We looked at the drive-through, the stacking, and kind of that design. Some of those same kind of comments and stuff was brought up. I'd have to go back through my notes to see why we did, but once again, it felt like it was kind of building orientation, and that was the only side of the building to then the way that for out parcel 2 specifically standards is that the only way that the drive-through could have worked. So, yeah, because I don't know how Dunkin's business, I mean, if stacking is an issue there currently, but you do have like where that north connection piece is at is right where their drive-through lane's at. And so you're gonna have people trying to get in, get out type thing. So that may be one thing to look at and discuss with the applicant.
Well, I mean, it's also, it comes down to like, if this design works for them, that's great, but like, how do they communicate the rules to the drivers, right? Like, and that is signage.
And that is part of your guys' purview, because what, in the ICD language, basically any signage that requires directional signage, drive-through signage, menu board signage, all of that stuff is part of their sign package that DRB has to review and approve. Once again, that's not included with this, but it will have to be submitted and reviewed and approved either conjointly or as a separate application, but they're not going to be able to install signage unless they go through the DRB process. And that's all signage for the building.
I think at this point, we just raise the issue and ask for their views. I mean, we're sort of speculating now, because I can't really tell how cars are going to go through there.
See, so if you were to then turn the building 45 degrees, like where then the drive-through is technically facing the road, that's technically not permitted per the ordinance straightforwardly. I think it could be interpreted that it could be, once again, if the screening and everything is there, which they are providing, which you then may, be able to have better kind of site flow. If you then do a full 180 of the building, it still doesn't work, because then you're kind of getting rid of parking, and then you're dealing with the same issue. So there's not an ideal, I think, answer.
I doubt they want a drive-through as the view you see on the main road. That's not very visually.
No, and that's, like I
to
said,
them.
that's why it's set up the way it is, because that's what the ordinance kind of states, is that the drive-throughs are not, it's not supposed to be in front of a public right-of-way.
So would the entrance exit that feeds into the Duncan exit, so the Duncan exit, is that a one-way road right there? Because if not, it is one-way? So how does if you're leaving the Duncan exit,
See, Paul,
do they have to merge right to get, I mean,
No, I think she's talking about the connection from the.
from the drive-through?
Yeah. It may be warranted that become really an entrance only, like a entrance only, because yes, to your point, you then get into where the stacking technically begins for Dunkin'. That's why I was saying I don't know if that was a current concern. You pull up the Google Maps.
That's just a trouble spot, so they just need a heads up, and they just need to fix it. I mean, or not fix it, but like have a plan for it, because if Duncan is coming around, I mean, you literally need to sit in your invisible car, go through the Duncan drive-through, and then as you're leaving, you're going down that road towards the internal, right? And so if you've got another car coming at you, or you've got two lanes going in the same direction, I mean, like, that's a problem.
You see, you have full access here. The problem is if you were making a left turn in to the site, this is the proposed site for the Whataburger, the vacant parcel here. This becomes then the stacking in the order, the drive-through for Dunkin'.
And then how does the left hand, like, obviously the people in the right lane taking a left-hand turn into Whataburger would need to yield to the people coming out of Dunkin'.
Yeah,
But
and
like,
you
how do
see-
you, but like, again, more signage, like, if you don't know that's happening, it just is a problem area, so they just need to be aware of it so that they can solve it.
You may be able to, I'm trying to think if they were to flip the side and have the drive-through here, where then you have.
Because right now Dunkin' doesn't have no one's challenging their lane, right? Because no one's coming to that parcel. So right now, all those people are used to just.
There's a already connection point there too.
Yep.
So
So,
we can discuss that with them. There is, as you see, when Out Parcel 2 got approved, there was through connection here and here. The only concern with here is, once again, if you turn left into here, or turning into here and then you're trying to make a left, you got to think about turn movements, and you don't want it to stack up and back up into the actual road of Marvin Gardens Drive.
It almost make more sense to do British lanes where.
We can ask them to incorporate it on this site plan. They can do that because that would be beneficial to them too.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
And then
They'll
make
do-
them
that's-
show the
that's-
traffic pattern.
That's easy for them to do. I mean, that's an easy request. That's something they can do very easily.
Well, I do see your point. It is going to, drive-through lane for Dunkin' Donuts is going to become problematic for entering into one.
As well as if two lanes are exiting out of the Whataburger, if they both want to go right, can they? Or is the left lane, are they only allowed to turn left? And then how is that
Internal, yeah, road
communicated
network.
signage-wise?
It would, my best recommendation, and once again, I don't think it's really incorporated in their plan, but we can discuss this with them, is they would have a stop sign at the end of the drive-through, and then not allow them to make a right turn.
Unless you're in the right lane.
Yeah, well, it potentially. Yeah, true. Hours, the uses.
Most of the traffic for Dunkin' is in the morning, not to say that there isn't any. And then Whataburger is more of a lunch or dinner time. So that would mitigate it a little bit, but I still agree with them adding it to the site plan.
So overall, have you been taking notes? Overall, based off of this, what I'm hearing you guys, the consensus is, one, elevations need to be revised slightly to be more consistent with, one, what's outlined in the ICD language, but two, the
Or
surrounding building.
External
Yep.
other buildings, yeah. To Ken's point.
And then two would be somewhat of the overall site design regarding the drive-through and circulation throughout the site in connection with the out parcel 2, as well as the existing egress road there on the opposite side. And then obviously the signage is a separate issue. We hear that too, but the first two are the biggest two I think I'm hearing from the site design and elevations, correct? Okay. So we will send these overall, I'm going to send the plantings and stuff to Keith, the urban forester, kind of get his comments. So hopefully we'll have that for you guys by the next meeting.
Yeah, it doesn't even say what types of plants
It
they
does,
are.
right here.
Oh, good Lord.
You got to look at them and yeah.
I need a microscope.
I like to get highlighters or pens and color code.
Oh, my Lord, they're all the.
Some Russian sage, some happy returns.
Okay. I don't know any of that is, so that's fine.
See, that's why we have Keith.
Moroccolis? Happy returns. That's. As
But-
long as they're using. Yeah.
So ultimately, too, like they have the proposed sidewalk, the pedestrian connectivity with this little hatchling. Once again, all out parcels are supposed to install the linear sidewalk across their frontage. They've got that. Once again, the building, the size of the building, the use, and all that complies. The trash facilities are screened. The individual landscaping of the drive-through menu boards are provided. So overall, it is consistent / complies with the regulations in the Marvin Gardens ICD outside, like I said, the building elevation. So we will get those comments to the applicant, see if we can get some of that amended, and request one of a representative from the design team or the applicant to be here at the next meeting.
Okay, cool. All right. I think that is your planner report. Do you have one? This was a lot tonight.
So just a few items. One, if you were, I know Kelly, thank you for coming last Monday. We did have a development and zoning 101 course. That's why you guys received an email. In short, it was something that the village, we asked Centralina to come and basically kind of do a high-level overview of planning and zoning and how it relates to Marvin specifically and how, you know, our stuff that you guys heard during the MDO process, you know, consistent with state statutes, property owners' rights, you know, the procedures that go through development approvals, if it's administrative, legislative, quasi-judicial, all that.
It was a really good, clear, simple presentation. I would recommend us all having a copy as just reminders, but it'd also be a great, if we have a new planning board member, to use it for their orientation, because I thought that it was an excellent presentation, so.
And that's where I was going with this, is that we have we recorded it, and we have uploaded the recording on our website, as well as Austin and Ptolemy went through and basically bookmarked, mostly Austin, bookmarked like the table of contents to an extent. So it's like when we were talking about the rezoning process, like you can go straight to the video, and kind of had some like, you know, questions in there. So if you get a chance, you know, go check it out. But ultimately, it was an opportunity for residents to come and learn, because we're seeing that with, you know, current rezoning processes and everything. And even when we adopted the MDO and did the open house, I believe some residents have, you know, don't have a full grasp of what we all do, what planning board does, the procedures involved in that. If an application is submitted, like how it has to go through the process. And for example, like tonight, like there was a comment made that requested you guys to withhold making an action on a rezoning. Unless the applicant agrees to that, you can't do that. Yes, like council can not approve it, but ultimately you can't withhold making a decision on an applicant. That applicant specifically has been willing to work with the village and hear the concerns of the residents, provide additional information as requested, but technically he didn't have to do that. I mean, yes, it hurts maybe his chances of getting approved, but he could have requested tonight for you guys to make a recommendation, because technically today, per the ordinance, was that third meeting. But since the applicant has waived that, that's the reason why we're, you know, once again delaying it till May. So overall, yeah, good opportunity. We may be looking to, you know, do some more kind of things like that. It brought, you know, an idea to, especially for planning board, and you made a good, you know, comment regarding, you know, new planning board members. There's training and stuff that the School of Government offers, that Centralina offers, that we'd be happy to share, pass along those opportunities. Somewhat, I think maybe I don't know if it's included in the budget, but I have specific money in my budget for training and stuff opportunities. So, you know, there may be opportunity there for planning board, as well as if we ever slow down, just as we did with like the quasi-judicial training. I mean, like, you know, we'll find those kind of moments to definitely go through some of that stuff.
Can I ask a question about, because it kind of pertains to this, but you know, there was a lot of, that meeting kind of like, I was a little disappointed because it kind of became about Ravi's property, you know, but at the same time, you know, when we're getting these, when we're hearing these the public comments, I'm hearing a lot of information. People are very confused. They're just flinging acronyms around. They don't really know what they're talking about. They're saying that certain variations, variances. I'm like, that's not what this is. There's just, you know, they think they know what they're talking about, and so then it's in public comment. We can't correct it, right? And so then I feel like that's just more misinformation that's going out there. So like, how do you address, like how, and not necessarily us, but like, is there a way to take just a minute or two to address? I don't, this was just.
I will say council has started doing this. You know, here in the public comment, then at the next meeting, you know, trying to once again provide either the right information or at least the where you can find the right information, because I think there is, you know, an issue or just misinterpretation, it's not necessarily misinformation, it's maybe misinterpretation or misunderstanding and confusion. So, and that gets wrapped up, and it does create a lot of the issues that we are seeing, you know, and it's some staff kind of, I mean, it's I wouldn't say maybe burden, but it does involve staff time going through those comments and then getting that information. I mean, if there's ever any specifics, I know, for example, at the joint meeting, the information regarding the historic preservation stuff, you guys asked about that, and I think we got that information. Council went through that.
Did we relay it back out to the public?
It
Because
was released as a press release, so we did send an email out with that, with all that information. It's available to read on our website. So if they're on our mailing list, they got it. They got a link to it, noting that this is responses to a lot of the comments received over the last few meetings. I mean, if you're in government, this is what you deal with. You're always chasing this information. We try what we can. We do what we can to correct it, to get the right information out there. There's always going to be more.
And yeah, and to add to that, like a lot of the things, especially with, I mean, both of the comments for both of the rezonings that were on the agenda tonight, it's regarding stuff that gets more into those detailed engineering plans. Like, yes, 100% an applicant, if they're investing money, and especially in a site-specific plan, should go ahead and get a lot of the base information done. Where do we need retention ponds? Where are they going? How are we managing this? But then the actual does that work gets into the those engineered plans. And once again, if it's not compliant, they're not going to get a permit from the village or DEQ to construct. That means then what would happen is they would have to come back, because they are vested, depending on the vesting time. For example, like Marvin Grove was vested for 7 years, meaning that, you know, they have 7 years to begin and build the development. But if they were to, you know, have to come back because they need to add another stormwater pond, you know, there's ways that you can either, if you're reducing something like that, like reducing building, like we can put that in the approval in the development agreement that it can be an administrative. But if they were to come back, for example, in Robbie's case, and have to do a stormwater pond, which then it eliminates parking and kind of changes the overall site design, he would have to come back and go through this whole process again to have it amended. If it's the current council or future councils then don't approve that amendment, and he can't make it work based on stormwater, then it just whenever the vesting period runs out, the zoning just reverts back. I mean, so there's still protections in place after a zoning is approved, or a conditional zoning specifically is approved, that they still have to comply with, and that is still reviewed by the village and other agencies before they then actually construct. If they can't comply with that, once again, there's ways to mitigate or fix those, but depending on the severity of it or the significance of how it's going to then change their overall site, it may have to come back through the same process that it's going through now. So, I just wanted to make sure that was kind of clear. Like, we as the village, and I'm sure planning board, we hear the comments and concerns. Our goal is to try to hear what that is, work with applicants on trying to mitigate or incorporate that in the best we can. Ultimately, those are recommendations from staff. The applicant doesn't choose to really kind of take those into consideration. It's their own choice. But I do think that will hurt their chance of potentially getting approved. But, a lot of the things that are brought up and all this stuff, you can't fix every single problem, and we can do the best that we can to get ahead of it and be proactive if it's, even regarding like the public safety aspect of it. The applicant heard that, began these conversations with the village and Union County Sheriffs, and, that will be something that's incorporated in, and a certain percentage of the buildings will be reserved for civic public safety use. So there are ways to mitigate and address certain concerns, but, that's our job. That's what we're trying to do.
The only thing out of, some of the comments that were made tonight, I was able to see that it was misinformation, but I do think it would be interesting to understand the, removing retention ponds. I believe that the retention pond that was initially planned for the village hall was removed because the footprint changed.
Correct.
So there was no longer a need, but there's this conspiracy theory keeps popping up, and it's just like, it's muddling the works, and so I don't know, just, being able to speak to that, or even the ZEPSA's like gonna be disturbing slave graves. I mean, like the idea of not preserving like a cemetery is like shocking to me, but I don't, but there's no historic district, so like,
And to
it's like, what?
answer that, like, once again, once an application or any development is approved from a zoning standpoint, and they submit their plans to the village, they also are submitting those plans to DEQ, to Army Corps of Engineers, all those applicable agencies. In any instance where, if they're disturbing, if a wetland is identified or any of that, then it potentially then triggers additional reviews. For example, for Marvin Grove, for their stormwater pond, there is they did a wetland delineation and environmental analysis that, basically stated that there are identified wetlands on the site. They submit that to Army Corps. Army Corps either concurs or says, no, those are not jurisdictional wetlands. In this case, yes, they are. And so it does trigger additional reviews. One of those is that they have to coordinate with the state SHPO, State Historic Preservation Office. So some of the comments and stuff received tonight, like, once again, they have to do that to then get those certain approvals. So I don't, it's one of these things, like, I don't see how we can potentially, I don't think legally we can require all that information a part of a rezoning, because they're investing money into a vision and opportunity as part of the rezoning. And if they were to do all that up front, I mean, once again, some of that due diligence needs to be done. I mean, it's smart investment of money, but I don't see how you can require like a full stormwater and hydro analysis. I don't see how you can require, there's already processes in place if they get the zoning that they have to do that anyway. And so,
And that's really, I think, that's helpful to know, because I think that's helpful to also communicate to the people in the audience who are concerned, because it's like, those checks and balances exist, but they don't happen before the zoning decision. They happen after the fact, when the money is then invested to get all the permits and do all that kind of stuff. Because it continues to perpetuate this, like,
I'm not sure that was heard, based on, because we've heard so many of these comments ongoing.
yeah, it's one of these things.
And you've said that before, and then, it just keeps.
Like I said, ultimately, like, we hear it, and there are processes in place. I mean, for example, our stormwater ordinance. Our stormwater ordinance is above and beyond DEQ's minimum requirements, meaning that we go all the way to the 100-year storm. DEQ only goes up to the 25, which larger storm events is what those ponds and the stormwater facilities are built to, meaning that it's a higher standard than what DEQ requires. That's reviewed by the bill. This came up actually specifically for the Rayleigh Miller at their neighborhood meeting. The applicant has an engineer that does these plans, that stamp and put their engineered stamp on it, that they completed these plans with engineering, whatever license, all that stuff, in compliance with the ordinance.
They can lose their license if they're.
Correct. The village engineer reviews those plans in compliance with the standards. It's, again, engineered stamp. DEQ. I mean, so there are professional engineers that are licensed and have those certifications that are submitting and reviewing these plans. They're not just rubber stamped or just like, oh yeah, we think this will work. Like, there's a lot, and I think council brought this up when they were responding to public comment last week, is like, when it comes to stormwater, there's a lot of other aspects than the actual stormwater or how it was designed that could be causing what is happening. And the preserve, for example, has a 50-foot storm drainage easement that runs through a couple of the lots. It's a swell. I can't say for a certain or what, but, those property owners are supposed to be maintaining that. I don't know if over time it's changed, who knows, but that could then be impacting how it was originally designed. So there's a lot of different. Technically, DEQ. So the village does not hold any post-construction stormwater permits. We are not in MS4. So the state is in charge of enforcing the post-construction stormwater rules and post-construction stormwater permits. The permittees, or in residential subdivision capacity, the HOAs technically hold those permits. I have seen that you have some neighborhoods when they were transitioned over from the developer to the HOA, and I mean, Tullamore and Amber Meadows are good examples of this. clear as day on what they were supposed to be doing, like who's responsible, a maintenance plan for their ponds, all this stuff that they're following to the state. Then you have the preserve that I've had conversations with previous board and their property manager, and they weren't even aware about the post-construction stormwater permit. Like, preserve hasn't.
Is that a Toll Brothers property? Like, I don't know.
It was a Toll Brothers development, but I can't say exactly what happened. I don't know. And I've had this conversation with DEQ. You know, how can the village assist in some of the, you know, this transition and making sure? And I mean, being a state agency like that, I mean, they have a lot of other municipalities that they have jurisdiction over. And so, I mean, even for Union County, Lily Kay is her name. She's the one that comes out and does all the inspections for sedimentation, erosion control, and post-construction. I mean, checks all the ponds and for development closeout, all that stuff. But she's one person, and she's over all of Union County. So, you know, when our engineers here and even our public works staff, they're going out, you know, checking for sedimentation, erosion control, compliance during an ongoing development. There's been numerous times where we've had to convey to a developer that they're in violation of sedimentation, erosion control, either if it's silt fence is down, I mean, all that stuff. Like, we're doing that. We don't have to. It's DEQ's enforcement, but, you know, we're doing what we can to help with the day-to-day and all that stuff. When you get into that stormwater thing, trust me, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to find, you know, assistance with DEQ, as well as like with some of these neighborhoods that have these post-construction permits that haven't one day ever certified to, because technically per those post-construction permits, the HOAs are technically supposed to have the ponds and stormwater utilities inspected annually and submit that to, one, the village, and two, DEQ.
So like, has that I mean, I know the HOA just changed hands. I guess all the HOA members resigned and a new, so have they been told that they should reach out to Toll Brothers to see what those documents were, if they don't currently have access to them?
I've talked with the property manager
They have
and
bridges. I mean, like, you know, like water was always going to be an issue for this particular neighborhood. I mean, so like that should be, the fact that they have bridges to get to some of their homes.
that's the other thing, I think, you know, in some conversation with some of the residents, because in that neighborhood specifically, you know, and I'm not saying I don't know the full extent of what when I say concerns or what they're experiencing. I know certain property owners, I've had those conversations, but what they don't realize in some instances is that's how it was designed. They're talking about, you know, during rain events of how quick some of the water's, going through their yards. That's because it's a swell and it's intended to get the water from where it's entering the site to the ponds.
Right.
Like, it's part of the design. You know, it's very hard. It's very hard to then explain that and they grasp that. And so yeah, it's, you know, I've sent.
Sorry, could we reach out to Toll Brothers and have them send a representative who worked on that or who can explain the design plans and have them meet with that neighborhood? Like, to explain it, to put it to bed?
That'll never happen.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean,
Or they totally out of the picture now.
Well, I mean, just to have some.
technically, yes, in my opinion,
But
because
explain it.
the permit is, the post-construction permit is technically in the HOA's name, in that specific case.
It's also been more than 10 years, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just mean like, who could explain why that this is part of the design, you know what I mean? Like, not that they'd be, you know.
And some, you know, to add.
Information session.
Add to that, like, you know, this has been conversation for the last 2 or 3 years, and especially with, you know, having a public works director and our public works staff growing, is us becoming an MS4, meaning that we would hold all the post-construction permits. But there's a lot that kind of goes into that. There's staffing needs, but also, like, in those instances, currently in every single neighborhood in Marvin, either if you have a stormwater pipe in your backyard in an easement or a swell, it either says on the plat or your CCNR is that you as the individual property owner is responsible for maintaining, or if something goes wrong, or the HOA is, but it varies. And that's what's tough, is that in other instances, especially when it comes to the actual gray infrastructure piping, if the municipality holds an MS4, which we're small in size, so it's not necessarily like we have to, and I mean, we're growing and we're growing in staff and all that, but with that being said, like, that is a burden on HOAs, and that's a burden on certain property owners, and that's something that the village sees, but, you know, to become an MS4 and do a stormwater management plan and all that stuff, it takes time. I mean, we maintain the infrastructure within the right-of-ways, but that's how DOT operates too, and we took a lot of these roads over from DOT. Once it's out of the right-of-way, it's not their problem. And I'm not saying that's not what I'm saying it shouldn't be the village's problem, but there are steps that have to be taken for us to get to, you know, be able to maintain and assist with those issues.
Well, I mean, if no one has, I mean, they should really reach out to the Toll Brothers and see if they can get those documents, because I think that would clear up a lot of.
Like I said, I've got the post-construction permit, and I've offered to the property manager to send it, but it's what does it mean? It's still, there's questions that I can kind of ask from a base level standpoint, but it's.
The attorneys for Toll Brothers will not show up, will not let anyone show up and say a word to us.
Yeah.
Or they will get killed.
Oh, no, it was.
There's no upside for them at all to
No,
help us.
like more like from a
with the-
design standpoint, that this is part of the design.
I'm aware of that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Their file is closed, they've made their profit, they've gone on, they have no.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's just.
Your best bet is look, whatever information you can find publicly and read it, because.
And I know of another subdivision that's in the same boat where development, well, not necessarily the same boat as preserved, but that development kind of changed hands a couple of times, and they're in the process of trying to get their the permit. The post-construction permit is actually in the original developer. It's a mess. It is a mess. But that permit can't transfer from the original developer into the HOA's name because there's something that wasn't done per the, and DEQ's involved, but at the same time, it's like, we're trying to find ways to make sure that those transition, I mean, we're doing it with certain, or, you know, in my tenure here with the subdivisions that have been reviewed and approved or closed out, and making sure that all those steps, maintenance plans, and everything is properly transferred over. We're doing what we can now. We're just now trying to figure out how we can assist and clean up previous.
All right, God, what a mess.
But, and other than that, I know that we kind of went through a lot there, but from planner's update is, I do want to go ahead and let you guys know there's been another rezoning application submitted for a property off Marvin School Road. It's a 3-acre tract zone rural residential. It's going to be on your guys' agenda next week or next month. I'll get into greater detail. It's a very similar case to, once again, previous conversations had. However, this one is one of those where the request is from RR to SFR1. Their neighborhood meeting will be April 29th at 6 p.m. here at Village Hall.
Rural residential to SFR1?
Yeah. And
One to three. One property to 3 properties, that's what they're.
well, that's what I was about to say, is that it can only create one additional lot on SFR. Even though it's 3 acres, it's not one of these like a previous rezoning where it could be developed in kind of different ways. Like you knew what the standards were. This one, if it gets approved in SFR1, it can only be created one lot because of the frontage and there's floodplain. I mean, so so it's pretty straightforward. I just want to go ahead and let you guys know. That'll be on your guys' agenda, but that neighborhood meeting is April 29th at 6 p.m. here at Village Hall. And their proposed, even though once again it's a regular conventional rezoning, not site-specific, their proposed like minor subdivision plat is on the website with the application. So you can see that it can only be subdivided once. So, with that being said, any questions? All right, that's all I got.
All right. The only action items the board has is just to review MDO.
Yes, just with the Rayleigh Miller rezoning is the first project that you guys are really going to get to dive into the MDO and test, I mean, the aspects of it, because it's a commercial development, it's a mixed-use development, and that mixed-use district was specifically created, or, you know, was created as part of the adoption of MDO. So I would recommend going and reviewing Article 8 for the mixed-use district, Article 9, which is building type and lot type, but the permitted uses specifically. We'll kind of dive more into that at the next meeting. And landscape and buffering's Article 11, and parking's Article 13, I think. But parking, there's 13 streets, so parking's 12. But once again, like, you don't, I'm not saying you have to review all that. I would definitely just review Article 8 with the mixed-use district and the permitted uses. And, yeah, mixed-use too, because there's a MU1 and MU2. Their proposal is for the MU2 district. Basically, it's difference in permitted uses, nothing else is between the MU1 and MU2. But, yeah, definitely look at that. But all that information will be provided to you guys at the next meeting with the staff report for that rezoning as well.
Around the room? You want to start? I know, this is the most I've ever heard you speak. Thank you, staff.
You know, a lot of big meeting tonight, so thank you.
Nothing. Thank you, Dan.
All right, so could I get a motion to adjourn?
It's my job. Yeah, I move to adjourn.
All in favor? All right, so moved. Thank you, everybody.